Thousands are still asleep, dreaming of terrifying monsters.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Panama Hat channel. After that slightly insane intro I put together in about 2 minutes before we started, just to have something to go off. Badly edited, as you can see, but nevertheless.
I thought it was excellent.
There was no real logic behind it. I just sort of threw stuff together and blasted some music over it. So, anyway. Announces us.
Allô, mes amis, bienvenue à Studio Panama avec Simon et Panama Chapeau. This is it, Sunday Studio with Panama and Simon, and you are listening to our music bed, which we're experimenting with, which is the excellent YouTube channel Studio Giscard, which is a recreation of French studio music. That's library music, I should say.
No, Simon. You should say no. We've got the house band. The house band, led and conducted by the able Studio Giscard. He's there. He's actually live in the room now.
They are literally, It's like oh gosh, what did they have on? Like Hancock's Half Hour, like Wally Stott and his band.
Yeah. Or who was it? Was it Paul Schaefer used to do Letterman? You know, like he'd be. They have the house band. I mean, I know what's going to happen, Simon. We're going to have all the autists that watch the channel go, oh, we don't need it. It's interfering in the background.
We're trying to create a relaxed late night jazz cellar feel, so you can just sit back with a drink on a Sunday. I've got my drink, which I've
got mine
clinking.
Oh no!
Against the microphone.
Hang on. No, it's all right. Saved. I've got a bottle of pink gin here. I'll fill up with that.
Let us know in the chat if the sound levels are okay. We're just trying to find the right level for a music bed, so we can have it in the background.
Yeah, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough to begin with.
It's going to be rough.
The idea, this is a bit of a test stream, so the idea is that we can do kind of shorter Sunday. I like what you called it, Sunday Studio. We'll call it Sunday Studio, where we just sort of natter and maybe watch something, maybe not, but we'll probably just talk. Yeah, and obviously it's going to take some experimentation to get right. So I think, as you can probably hear, the stream yards interface is struggling a bit, probably with the levels, but we'll get it all ironed out. So bear with us. But
we at least have one person watching, so do tell us if it sounds okay or if it sounds terrible. We will adapt and overcome.
We will adapt. We'll find a way. I always like the idea of having a program, you know, like where we sort of, like, say we talk for a bit and then it kind of plays some tracks and then we just kind of come back, you know, not with links or necessarily relevant stuff. It just kind of like, I hate to invoke him because I despise the man, but you know, Bronze Age pervert, you know, he used to kind of have that. I always admired his sort of aesthetic styling, in that he would do the whole kind of I'm on a Caribbean island being mysterious thing. And there would be sort of snatches of classical music in between the segments. I quite like that.
Absolutely. I mean, basically what we are, I mean, certainly me, I'm a frustrated radio host. That's what I'd really like to be doing, is having a studio where we can play anything at all we want. We don't even have to back announce if we don't feel like it.
No, it just comes on.
I was telling Panama the other day about Resonance FM, the art studio in London, which years ago was very, very good. And you would switch on, and sometimes it would be medieval music, and sometimes it would just be like a 5-hour recording of the sounds of a German train station. Just great stuff. Just audio, sort of audio installation, sound field recording, that kind of stuff, and all kinds of eclectic music. Not least of which, of course, was Johnny Trunk's great OST show, which ran for 20 years, which I was a huge fan of, which played all this kind of stuff. Library music, for people who don't know, is the sort of music that was composed in the 60s and 70s, and it was run underneath, say if you had a program like The Professionals, and you had a sequence where like Bodie and Doyle are creeping around an underground car park, and there'd be a sort of a tense track like do do do
Yeah.
do 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 do, wow, 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 and that would be the library
Incidental
music.
music.
Essentially, library music. Yeah, it was put out on records that weren't issued to the public, but you can sometimes find them, and they just were done. They were actually played by brilliant jazz musicians of the age who were sort of, slumming it during the day. So they go and record sessions in Soho for people like KPM and Bruton and Chappell. And if you go on YouTube, you can find lists of, like KPM playlists of their library music records. And some of them, you'll find the classic tunes that were actually intros that we used for BBC TV shows, comedy shows, sports shows, anything that were done just as library tracks and then were filched by the BBC for intros to programs. And really high standards of recording and musicianship. I mean, really lush stuff to listen to. Not elevator music, as some people think. It was actually
it's not Muzak.
No. A lot more refined than that, but a brilliant genre, much underrated. But this is pastiche of the music that the French produced in the same vein at a place called Studio Ferbey, which was like their sort of locus of great library music. That's by a guy called a young guy called Max, who runs this channel. Doing this, he's a multi-instrumentalist who does his own stuff, and we're going to sort of experiment with things like this, maybe, or maybe we will play the sound of a German train station or a.
See, this is the kind of place I want to take it. I want this channel to end up sort of really, really on the avant-garde, not even avant-garde, just weird end of things. To be honest, I like that type of stuff.
Yeah, someone says in the chat, sound is plum. Now, plum. I don't know if this is good or
I think
bad.
that means fine. That just means it's like a plumb line. It's all right.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Yeah.
Big Cover says it's a bit uneven. I mean, that's probably true. But we'll, as I say, we'll iron these things out.
Yeah. Listen on playback.
I might even look into slightly different streaming services, or maybe just get the premium version of StreamYard. See if we can get more sort of audio and tech options with that type of thing.
Now we're talking big money, Panama Hat, and big money means
I'm yeah, you know what it means, Simon.
Yes, that's right.
This is it.
Panama's reactionary good nature is straining with the demands of commerce at this point.
Exactly.
This is the vulgar cap proffering which we are doing, or which I am doing. I'm going to take the psychic weight off Panama. He will never ask for money because that is utterly vulgar, and it is. At the same time, I'm from the gutter, and as Joe Orton said, cheap clothes look better on people from the gutter, and that's how I kind of roll.
There you go. I mean, also, I think it's going to be a matter of time before we have to start talking and sort of in theme with the music, isn't it?
Mate, this is
back.
It. I know.
To Sunday Studio. With
I'm trying to resist that.
Roberts.
Hey,
well,
we don't want to go too Barry White.
When I was hunting for clips for that sort of quite crap intro, the
a beautiful clips.
Well, yeah, but it's just a bit random. I mean, I can do better, Simon. I could do better.
We always do better, though. We can always do better.
We'll make it slicker and more artsy. But a lot of the clips, I've got a thing for these sort of old 1930s sort of radio and TV presentations. But they always have to sort of be maximum formality. They're just introducing a jazz band, but they've got to wear, like white tie and have pomaded hair and come on and go, hello, welcome back to the BBC Jazz program. Here, I'd love to just occasionally do is every Sunday maybe we do like a themed one where we just sort of we sort of bring it more towards that type of thing, or do like a sort of what's in Reservoir Dogs they have a clip of that radio host. He's a real radio host. I can't remember his name.
Well, it's Steve Wright, the comedian, isn't it? K-Billy's Super Sounds of the 70s, that thing, yeah.
But he used to actually broadcast a program in that voice, didn't he? Where it was like this really unenthusiastic deadpan.
He may well have.
I think
he may well have done. Yeah, I mean, he's got the perfect pitch for it. I mean, it's what is it? What tonight at the Carson Fairgrounds? Big Daddy Don Bodine or whatever he is in the monster. Behemoth, that thing. That's great stuff. Funnily enough, it reminds me again, because talking about Resonance FM as I was a minute ago, Stuart Lee used to do a program on there where he created a fake persona of himself as a presenter called Bacon Face, and he would pretend to be a sort of Canadian guy whose brother had killed himself or something, and he'd inherited all of his brother's records, these kind of obscure synth records, all sort of early 80s post-punk records, and he'd play them out. And I remember seeing, because he did promo shots of his own face covered in bacon.
Brilliant.
Yeah, just fake, but knowing fake, which we like. Pomo.
Yeah, I like that kind of thing.
Yeah. So
we could. I also thought we could, Einsatz Neubauten or whatever they're called, like the avant-garde German band.
Einstürzende Neubauten. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never actually heard it said out loud, so I don't know what the
industrial noise. Yeah.
Yeah, but I also like that they'd occasionally do a track that was just like really zoned out. You just have one where it's just like I'd love it if the intro to the program was just 10 minutes of like you will find me if you want me in the garden, something like that.
Okay, is that pronunciation correction? Neubauten.
Neubauten. I think Vingul is from the
Neubauten is what I think
he's from the Germanic Scandi end of Europe.
Yeah,
so
he's our expert advice. Well, I like
you know how on radio shows and of quite famously these days on podcasts, it's like a guy like off stage who they sort of get in details of. I like that we just sort of we sort of employ Vingul.
That's
like
it.
We just kind of go, right, Vingul, what's like for everything now? Like, okay, not just pronunciation. We go, can we get like a can we get the weather, please? Can we get the weather? And we have to have like
he's the Jamie to our Rogan. Yeah, bring up something for us.
Like we've got to have the noise of paper rustling and things.
So Vingul is in Norway. So there you go.
Vingul, Norway. Because
Rattus Norvegicus.
I can't remember who it was. There was some like American streamer I used to watch when I was a teenager, and the guy that used to like run all the tech and be a mod in the chat was called Raoul, and it was because he used to just go Raoul. It's shout for it. Yeah. All right, we got the weather from Vingul.
Does the American Russian?
Sunny and 19 Celsius in Norway. Sorry.
Excellent.
Sorry, Simon, you were saying.
No, not at all. I was actually sort of talking just over you there. I was thinking of Rush Limbaugh, when he used to broadcast, and he had that guy Bo Snerdley, who used to be his and you used to think that's not a real name at all, but it is a real name. So he would call on him to do things, the studio engineer or whatever he used to do, producer, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, Simon, just a bit more chatter before we move on to anything, because I'm quite enjoying the vibe of this actually. Just sort of sitting here. I'm going to just change the name of the stream from like sort of the usual thing to Sunday Studio Part 1.
Yeah.
Because I think this definitely needs to be a regular feature now.
It's Sunday Lounge or something.
Sunday Lounge. I don't know. We're getting a bit like
go with Sunday Studio. Studio is more, Sunday, like art studio. Yeah.
Sunday Studio. What should we be? Sort of program. I don't know. Sunday Studio Feature 1. I like feature.
Yeah, or feature test 1. Transmission.
Yeah, let's do that.
Which it is, because it may get taken down. You never know.
Yeah, we never know. I mean, Mr. Giscard may say, "Oh, how dare you use my tunes on your show and have us, sent away."
Speaking of things in the interim, because we are sort of in the interim here, it's a Sunday, there's no real program. We've got a sort of informal sense of what we might do. I was looking more at Will Self again, who we both have an interest in. And then, interestingly, also, I think you were tiring of Jonathan Meades. I think you felt maybe we need to put him to one side for a moment and I think other things.
Having watched quite a bit of his back catalogue now in preparation. I think his streams are going to be a very specific type, and what I mean by that is that it's going to be us kind of discussing what he's talking about, but also picking at his kind of liberal assumptions a lot. And it's not that I've so much tired of him, it's just that I want to do that kind of more sparingly. I think we should do that maybe once every fortnight or so. I think we could do more interesting stuff in the meantime. When I say interesting, I don't mean to say that Meades is like dull or anything. I just mean that we can sort of vary it up. I think we need to have him as a kind of sort of slight bête noir where he sort of, we do a bit of Mead's moaning, when we're.
I think it's good to have, in a sense, a low threshold for critique where we feel that people's tone is not quite right. I mean, it's a thing I'm often conscious of with Adam Curtis streams as well, because people kind of want to flatten him down into a sort of all-purposes left liberal of the BBC who is basically evil. And I don't think in his case it's as simple as that. The thing about him is he does somewhat self-efface. He also does play with his persona as well. Sometimes people say, are you a filmmaker? Are you a journalist? And I think he thinks of himself mostly as a journalist, but who produces documentaries.
Yeah.
And he does sort of change, in a sense, the point of view from which he's telling the story. He may not be. It's different from saying he changes his own personal political positions, but he also does say, "I'm a postmodern person, or I'm a modern person. I don't really have a position. I kind of change depending on the issue." There is no kind of, people don't adopt a kind of code of being a reactionary or being a liberal anymore. They do kind of, a lot of people out there. I'm not saying you do. A lot of people out there, they choose from a kind of buffet of attitudes, don't they? That's sort of Christopher Hitchens' way of expressing things. Like, people take what they want from the sort of general table of beliefs in the discourse and kind of wear them like a comfy pair of slippers. And a sort of intellectual consistency, maybe something we can admire in the abstract, but do we live that way? Do we really feel that? And it's difficult. So with Curtis, I'm a bit more sparing, but with Meads, you did get the sense, certainly in that last one, he was kind of phoning it in for his buddies at the BBC, and it was much more querulous and much more, tetchy than I like Meads to be.
Yeah, there was an impotence to it I didn't like as well.
Interesting.
An intellectual impotence where it was just sort of this thing of, bloody Trump, bloody monster.
Oh yeah,
And I don't really. I mean, having listened to, I found some old clips of Meads like back in the '80s on TV shows and things, and he's much more interesting as a youth, I think, or relatively younger, I should say, not as a youth, but yeah.
Well, do you think that's the symptom of a lot of artists in a way? Like, let's say popular cultural artists, like filmmakers, musicians, the early work, people always go back to the early work because in a sense, that's where the mojo is. That's where the kind of spice is, the sort of energy of a younger man, which can be soaring and magnificent. It can also be callow in some ways, but it has the shit, as they say. It has the original zest about it. And then the older work, yes, it's more mature, it's more layered, but sometimes it can be a bit more drony and a bit more dull.
Yeah, I think so, but really, to me, it felt more like a zeitgeist problem. In that, I think it's not so much that he's changed; it's that the culture and the world around him has become so sterile. I mean, we're 26 years into the cultural freeze now. I think he just. I mean, what can a man like that do? There isn't anything really for him to critique. There's no kind of. There's no reality. I mean, this is it. Is that it's kind of impossible to use tools such as he would have used intellectually back in the day on the current moment, because it doesn't really exist. Like, it's all just the hyper real, as Curtis would say, right? It's just like, you can't, like, he's even the things he's attacking are kind of spooks. They're bits of paper, that the idea of Trump as this dictatorial fascist who is going to come and make the Fourth Reich in America. I mean, it's all that none of that's real. None of it's cogent because it's all just flabby fakery, right? I mean, he sees it as real, but it's not. So it's what you can't really be as sharp if you can't see the wood for the trees. If you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think I tend to agree. I was also looking overnight as well, as I say, at Will Self again, and there was an interesting thing. There's a couple of interesting things. Mr. Amory Crane, listener and follower,
friend of the channel,
part of the literati, I would say.
Literateur.
I was going to say
friendly. He's part of a small writers club that we have.
And I bet he could be a bit of a flaneur if he wanted to. I'm just saying.
Oh, he is a flaneur.
Oh well, there you
go.
Definitely.
I've seen him around.
Nous sommes les flâneurs.
Simon, he's known in all the boroughs.
Indeed. Perfect. What was I saying? Yeah, he turned us onto the Will Self programs that he did with Radio 4. There's one that's sort of like a bus journeys across Britain, which is quite interesting. And then another one, Humboldt, a Teutonic follower of mine, switched me on to Will Self doing a journey in a Trabant motor car across Germany, going back to Zwickau, where the Trabants were originally made. And it looks at the phenomenon of what they call Ostalgie, the nostalgia for the Ost, the Eastern Germany of old.
GDR, or however it was.
Yeah, the DDR. Yeah, the DDR. Was it Deutsches Demokratische Republik or something like that?
Something like presumably. That, yeah.
And it's actually really interesting. He does this trip in the Trabi, which I don't know if people know much about them. I don't know much about them, but apparently they were kind of like almost like a plastic car with a very basic two-stroke engine.
That's right.
They go 600 miles into Germany, with no wing mirrors on the Autobahn at 50 miles an hour, with Germans cruising past at 150 miles an hour, and it's quite difficult because obviously Will is 6'5" and he's cramped into this tiny vehicle.
Seeing Will Self get into a Trabant would be program enough, without even the political parts.
And the comedy doesn't stop there. He's doing it with a friend of his who is a chap he knew at school, who is what does he say? A person of restricted height. He's not like a dwarf. He's like smaller than that. He's got one of these sort of congenital growth disorders. I mean, that's probably a loaded way of saying it. Well, this is the interesting factor of the program. He does it with this chap who is fascinated by Ostalgie, and they go off on this road trip, and it's very good. The first episode, as they get in and they get the thing working, Will Self is laughing manically about this. I mean, it's actually very funny, and it's very entertaining as they sort of travel across, and you find that one of the sort of principal motors of the program, to pun intended, is that Will apparently years before had been on a chat show and he'd made an inappropriate joke about people of restricted height. So his friend had been offended, and Will is doing the journey as a kind of penance to make up for that. And this you are reminded of in nearly every episode. So it's kind of it comes almost front loaded with this guilt as they do this kind of this Ostquest, this
almost kind of Joycean, isn't it? Like you load it up with guilt and you have to travel into the depths of Germany to free your soul.
Yeah, it's got an interesting fun quality about it though. It's I won't spoil it. People can go and listen. They're only short episodes, like 15 minutes a piece, but one of the main things that comes out is it gets to sort of the 5th or the 6th episode, and they meet people who a guy who collects, I think he collects kind of East German nostalgia artifacts, and in his home he's got like a little tableau of the old Checkpoint Charlie with these German border guards. I don't know if it's a model or it's like full-size uniforms.
That's pretty hardcore.
Well, yeah, but I'm sort of fascinated by this because I remember Ostalgie coming up a few years ago. Of people have these kinds of fairs in Germany, these kind of like you have in Britain. You have like things like the War and Peace Revival, which is a sort of reenactor show in the southeast where people go along, dress up in all sorts of military uniforms and civilian gear of the time, and recreate these lost worlds of history. And I know that's very sort of has been very popular in the parts of the old East Germany. And this guy, they go and visit him, and they see this little. I mean, Self calls it a little sort of tableau mordant. It's a kind of he finds it deeply creepy and weird. And the other guy is a bit more forgiving, and he says, "Well, no, people are interested in the idea of the old East Germany because it was this utopian. Again, it's a hauntology of Europe in the Cold War. It's a time when, people were sort of, I suppose, trying to live towards a certain political, cultural, social, economic plan, the idea of which, based in communism, would be to improve people's lives." And they interview various people of the old East Germany who say, "Well, yeah, it was great. I had small kids, all the childcare was free. We all had jobs. Everything was affordable." He goes at one point to to a museum, and he sees some of the products of the old East Germany. There's only one kind of radio, but it's very solidly built. And Will Self loves this. He says, "This is fantastic." I can't. Shall I do the one?
Come
This
on.
is wonderful. I hate capitalism. I don't want to have a choice. I love having just the one thing. It's the tyranny of choice problem that you have in capitalism.
And he may have a point there. We're friends of the anti-liberal on this channel. So
I mean, if things were high quality and beautifully crafted, would you mind not having a choice? If everything was the best, great.
Even the whole idea of the ultra choice being purely capitalist is somewhat false, because for most of it's just. It goes back to say 1901.
Yeah.
And you went into your local corner shop in a village in Britain.
Yeah.
You'd have what, Pears soap. That'd be it. It's based. It's also because as AA points out, we don't really have choice in capitalism because they're all owned by the same mega company anyway.
Exactly.
What's the point? It's all corporatist anyway. So go on. Aaron.
Yeah, well, if one company owns a panoply of brands, all with a sort of fake sense of difference about them, what really is the point? Why not just have a kind of own brand of everything? Victory Gin. Just keep it.
It's a Victory Tea.
As long as so anyway. But the main thing you have that aspect of it. Where he's charmed by it, but then towards the end of the program, they meet this guy with this Ostalgie collection, and Will really gets ferocious about it, and he says, how could you defend this authoritarian regime where there were sort of people being arrested randomly and imprisoned, and there was no freedom, and that this program was made 10 years ago, and you sort of think, could we come back on that, Will, right now? You're talking about, you're bemoaning the idea of people being arrested without cause, and imprisoned and censorship. Is this ringing any bells, Will? Of course it doesn't to him, but the rest of us perhaps see the idea of what is authoritarian differently. Will sees it in a sort of stereotypical way, that it's all about slightly Germanic uniforms and a sort of a crushing sense of surveillance. But isn't this what we have now?
Well, also it's funny because a lot of that gets talked about by people who are on the capitalist side of the wall. The East Germany was this really, really totalitarian surveillance state, and obviously, you did have the Stasi being like, they were a pretty hardcore organization when it came to tracking down dissidents. But I've never heard anyone that actually lived in the GDR, whether they were a dissident or not, talk about that. That never seems to come through. They never say, "Oh yeah, it was this crushing sense of oppression."
Yeah,
like most people just remember, as you say, the fact that you had quite a strong social support network and a kind of holistic method of society. To be brutally honest, if we have to live in modernity and it was up to me to come up with, like, say, my Britain, if you like, for these times, it would probably look something like the GDR, but just British. I've always had this theory, right? And this sounds a bit off the wall, but it is relevant, right? In Wallace and Gromit, in like the shorts.
Yeah.
Do you ever notice how uncanny the world they live in is? Where it's a really well kept, quaint, vaguely 1950s Yorkshire town. Right?
Yeah.
And have you noticed how it's inhabited? It's looked after. But you never see anybody else, right?
Yeah.
The streets are empty, even though the shops are open and the museums are open, right? I used to get really freaked out without realizing why as a kid. It really used to disturb me. There's a shot of Gromit the dog sat in a cafe very late in the evening. I think it's in the one with the wrong trousers one,
Yeah.
And the cafe is dark, empty, but open. There's not a soul in there, and he's kind of doing a noir thing. He's looking over a newspaper at the penguin that he's following, and he gets up to leave. He simply puts money on the table and walks out. Right, and it's a really grim little bit of noir for a couple of fantasy characters, right? Yeah. And I always basically think, do they live in a kind of British North Korea? And I often think, in a way, that would be my ideal state. Like, we kind of freeze a time capsule of sort of late 50s, sort of Englandiana, if you like, and just sort of artificially keep it that way.
Yeah.
And And to be honest, I'd be happy with that than what we have now. I mean, yeah, obviously, you know, you'd have your problems, and the plumbing would probably be awful, and you know, you'd have to eat semolina pudding and take cold baths. But it would be, in a way, better for the spirit of the people. You know.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm being slightly old fart again. I mean, that's kind of my memory of being a child in the 70s in the streets around, let's say, where my grandmother lived. That it was deserted. It was kind of like that, but that didn't give it any sense of terrible desolation. It gave it a sense of it's a
No.
huge playground. It's
And
it's
there's
calm.
a strange sense of security about it, really. I mean, I get a
Yeah.
similar-ish vibe
Yeah.
from you know, Antonioni's Blow Up, where London
Yeah.
is just basically deserted. And the thing is,
Yeah.
they didn't clear the streets for that. That's just what London was like in the early 60s. Like, it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
just like that in the day.
You
know,
didn't
there weren't
have
people around.
you didn't have the thing of people milling around because you didn't have populations who needed to kind of mill around. I mean, again, this is obviously a child's eye view, but you know, suburban places at that time, you know, you didn't have people ostentatiously, you know, wandering around walking their massive killer attack death dogs.
Yeah.
You didn't have visible signs of drug dealing going on.
Yeah,
You know,
millions
the
of
thing,
cars everywhere.
yeah, the things that people remember were the sort of the hot summers, the long hot summers, the white dog shit, because you know you got white dog shit back then because of the amount of bone meal the dogs used to eat in their food, which was a strange thing. It was like you looked at this white dog shit. It was bright white, and it was like it had been calcified and turned to ash or something. But it was just a phenomenon of the time.
When I was lad, you had big
Yeah.
slabs at Cadbury for 10p and dog shit were white.
Yeah. But it was kind of calm like that. I suppose most people were working, and in those kinds of areas where my grandparents lived, there were possibly older people living, but they were probably out to work as well. So it was kind of like this is the thing, you know, the great AA thing about Trumpton. You know, people didn't want to go because you couldn't take your mobile phone. I mean, you wouldn't. This is the thing I was talking about. You remember with the birthday party, but talking about how it felt to be there. You didn't want for a mobile phone, obviously, because you couldn't conceive of it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and also it would prevent you improvising a bow out of twigs, you know,
exactly,
and hunting for things, and you know.
And if you didn't know how to do something, you couldn't just look it up. You had to experiment or ask somebody, or you know, find a way to do it. You had to actually use your wits, Simon. Wits. That's what people haven't got nowadays.
The number of young boys of my generation who play with, you know, improvised explosives in some level, you know, was legion. You know, whether it was the little bits of kind of, you know, you get the little things you could, like little bits filled with gunpowder, little paper things you could throw at the ground and they'd go bang. You know, I mean, and in some countries you actually get just buy bangers that you could, you know, little tiny ones that you throw around.
I mean, so just to say on that, just because I mean, I'm obviously you know, a child of this century, but I'm so grateful for that 12 years before smartphones, where like it was still pretty much like, especially in like in a small town in Wales, where you know, it was like it probably was basically as much more similar to the time you grew up in than a child now, because just like as soon as you went out of the house, there was no internet, there was no like screen media. You just had to do things like, you know, piss around in the muck, or you know, like play with, you know, just, I mean, as you say, improvised explosives. We had a friend who used to sneak into his dad's shed, steal old fireworks, and like cut them open and try and make gunpowder. I mean, obviously it's very dangerous, but it was fun. You know?
Well, up to a point,
And the risk is part of it. You know, that's part of what you wanted. That's why you're doing it. Playing with fire and matches, and
that's what boys do. I mean, and by and large,
rambling around. You know, just get on a bike and just going off somewhere, and you know, I mean, I'm sure kids still do this, but you know, you've always got a bloody smartphone in your pocket, haven't you?
I mean,
it
has to have a kind of landscape of adventure sense about it, where, you know, the old building, you know, you can go and maybe find a way in at the back and mooch around and have a look. But, I mean, you know, everything is framed now, obviously, from a point of view of precautionary principle and risk, and a maximal sense of that as well. You know, therapeutic state, health and safety culture, and you know, the reality was, well, you know, kids did stuff, cuts and scratches, but no big deal. I mean, yeah, there inevitably were things where some kids went properly wrong and, you know, killed themselves, but I can't think of many. Not many in my company. And yeah, the streets were largely a kind of, I mean, looked upon as a playground. And to be honest, they were largely safe enough to do that. So yeah, there's that thing that's you know, I'm sure it's not missing. I mean, I see kids out and about now doing stuff, which is good. It's just the sense in which they feel more like they're tethered, and they're certainly tethered to electronic devices.
And the feel of the society is different in that everything you do is potentially about to be recorded.
Yeah.
And that is basically the most inhuman form of living I can think of, where you physically cannot move away from the risk of a camera or the risk of something being permanent. And of course, one of the great joys of life is that most of it isn't permanent. That's a great freedom, really. Is that
exactly.
Anyway.
Well, return to the private. Return to the private. That's what I'm about here. It's the idea that this bogus reasoning of if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to be afraid of. It's like that takes away the space of the private, and so much of growth and learning is done in the private context. And actually, we're kind of trying to do this thing of removing the private context altogether, because somehow it's reasoned that you should be open to expose all facets of your life for all to see, because there's no way in which you would behave in any way that's less than morally approved of. And that's just simply not how people actually learn and grow. And you have the context of a reasonably forgiving and watchful society, which means that if the adult sees you doing something properly dangerous, they might step in and they'll be licensed to intervene in that way, and they won't take it to excess. But now, of course, people don't necessarily have the impulse control to manage others, like the risk of children or the risk that children take, with a sense of control of themselves. And we also have a sort of sense of legal liability attached to everything, and an inability to say that certain things should just remain the private matters of people as they grow and learn, and shouldn't be a kind of dossier of incriminating evidence against them, because none of us come out perfect to begin with, and very few of us have remained perfect by the end.
And it's just a repulsive thing to have to put up with, this idea that, as you say, anything you do could be recorded. It's just that people shouldn't. It's just not. I don't think human society needs or requires that. Yeah, I think if in HAT, British North Korea, there would definitely be a ban on any type of handheld recording device. So you're maybe allowed to have a mobile phone, but all the tech has to be unable to record. I know that's probably impractical, but you have to do these things.
Yeah, and CCTV.
No, it's not healthy.
No, we don't need CCTV, I think, either.
Well, the aim would be to get to a society so high trust you wouldn't need it.
Exactly.
You'd keep it, and then as soon as people were, better adjusted, you could get rid of it.
Yeah, that would be the aim.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So here we are. It's 4 o'clock on Sunday, the 19th of July, and we've been listening.
We need to pick up. Obviously, it's past 4 now, but you'd say the time now, fast approaching 4 o'clock of a Sunday.
That's right.
DJ Patter.
We will develop this.
I've got a few suggestions actually. I've got some like old out of copyright sort of slow jazz as well we could use.
Exactly. We're going to vary it. It's all
going
to
be vaguely Shining-esque, I think, but it would
very
work.
good. Very good. Yeah.
Mr. Torrance.
It's all a work in progress. Yeah. We are artists in the studio, opening up the pots of paint, marveling at the glorious garish colors that we have available, and experimenting. That's all we're doing.
Yeah. That's right. If you want to put a banana on the wall with some sellotape, we'll do it.
Yeah. We've got plans for a couple of shows this week in an equally vague sense, but also they develop, I think, as we notice things, read things, see things, and we're trying to make the focus not so much about the current slop, but we may be talking about things which are slightly adjacent or tangential to, or speaking to a deeper part of the condition in which the slop exists, that we'll try to unpick in some ways. There are broader problems.
There's just to say that our engineer, sound man, coffee boy, Vingle, now that he's officially employed on the show, he's just mentioned the old XFM Ricky Gervais tapes. I don't know if you're familiar with these, Simon.
I don't know this. No.
In the late 90s to the very early 2000s, just before he went and made The Office and then became a celebrity and then became crap, Ricky Gervais used to do a radio show on the old regional London station XFM, which is Radio X these days. Back when it had just started, it was like a really, you know, sort of genuinely quite cutting edge sort of, you know, local radio. And it was with Stephen Merchant and Carl Pilkington, who would go on to become, you know,
an idiot abroad
sort of
kind of.
Yeah, famous in his own right. He at the time he was just working as a producer at that radio station.
Yeah,
and it's quite good because it's sort of an anti-radio show in that partly because they're so sloppy and partly because they have a slightly sense of they want to deconstruct it a bit. They kind of do like a non-show where they, you know, they cock it up and it's not professional and you know they kind of pull the curtain back a bit. And I mean, I was referencing it slightly there when I did that. You know, time fast approaching because they used to mock kind of DJ, you know, sort of slick DJs with that. I like that vibe as well. You know,
we definitely have a meta sensibility here. Yeah.
Not to get too wanky and up our own asses about it, but yeah.
No.
Yeah, but I recommend it if you happen to, you know, have some, you know, just free moments, Simon. They're quite good.
I will indulge.
You know, it's probably a quiet taste, but I find them quite funny. Yes, and I mean, to be honest, Simon, I think I share your thing. I've always thought I'd quite like to have just a radio show, you know.
Yeah.
You know, just mess around on, really.
You do. I do sort of envy those people who've got, you know. There was one chap who contacted me on Twitter a few months ago. I put a sort of slightly nostalgic tweet, and he runs a show on a station. Which, I mean, a lot of these things obviously are internet stations now. It's not quite the same feeling as the old thing of tuning your radio in, and especially on the AM band where the sound is a bit less good, but it's more of an achievement to locate the sound.
Yeah, you have to fiddle with your knob.
That's it. I absolutely love doing that. You know, you've got all the sort of tuning and phase shifts that go on, and the crackle and the weather conditions change the quality of the broadcast. And FM is good in its own way, but it's the thing of live listening and people having a slot to do maybe a 1 hour show or something at a set time with a theme. And just that, you know, relaxed quality of not worrying about copyright strikes, you know, and having it there as a sort of regular metronome, like the weather in a way, to kind of fill the time and, you know, drop in, drop out. But that's the thing about radio is it's so many stations, if they do still exist as radio stations, they have a sort of more or less 24/7 operation, which is quite reassuring. There's a sort of continuous drip of something. And, you know, I think certainly the heyday of it has dropped away, but then there's also an element of people using the internet to reinvent parts of that. It's just because there's so many of them, it's difficult to get that sense of collective listening, which I like, the importance of people joining together and enjoying the things and feeding back. So, but yeah, I think it would be nice to have something like that. But, you know, we're trying to work around the evil eye of Sauron, which hovers around corporate YouTube.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Simon, because if we had a boat, we could probably do like a Radio Caroline thing, couldn't we? We could sort of sail out to international waters and start doing pirate radio. Though I doubt many of our YouTube listeners would follow us to AM radio. Didn't the BBC just stop AM radio? They did the last.
No, really.
I'm sure I read
probably true.
The other week. I think it was like about a week and a half ago. It was very recently.
Such a shame.
The BBC did their last ever AM broadcast. It's now, I think it's just digital and FM. I don't think they do the old radio anymore. So
such a shame. I mean, in a sense, much of the joy of radio for me in the past was in the lower tech forms. It was AM. It was things like shortwave, where, you know, if you're in the right part of the world, you know, you could pick up bits of Radio Moscow or Radio Luxembourg and all those things that people talk about in the past. But it was that sense of being able to dip into a pot of things that were going on in other places, and even with the bad quality of transmission, attach yourself to a sense of time continuing in another, you know, in a kind of another milieu, even another language, with a different, you know, sensibility washing over you. But I kind of quite like that, you know, that feel.
Yeah. And speaking of sort of slightly wacky or sort of out there radio broadcasting as well.
Yeah.
Something I've quite gotten into recently. I think it was actually through listening to one of the old Bonzo albums, as you and I want to do.
Mm.
So in America, they have obviously a lot more regional stuff. They have regional TV, regional radio, because the place is
Yeah.
so big.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm talking, obviously like sometimes like local counties have
Yeah.
their own radio, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they also have something that we never really had here, which is the concept of a regional horror host. So you may have heard of this. So on American television, traditionally on a Saturday night, you have a horror film, like an old sort of goofy 50s horror film or something. And there'd be like an announcer who has a character, and he sort of dresses up, in sort of goofy costumes, and would come on and sort of introduce the film, like he was sort of curating a series.
Yeah.
And I was thinking actually, because I've got a thing for sort of old novelty music and sort of weird old, like strange old tunes, sort of especially old jazz records. And I thought, what if we did a show on one of these Sunday studios where we just sort of, we show weird old jazz songs or sort of novelty music, just sort of wacky stuff, just for the hell of it, really.
Totally. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I mean, I think the famous one in Los Angeles was a woman called Elvira, who would introduce horror films back in the, is it 50s or 60s maybe?
Well, yeah, because she was famous because she obviously had sort of low cleavage and looked quite sort of, she looked a bit like Morticia Adams, didn't she?
That's right. Yeah.
I think a lot of people used to tune in for her. There's a guy who I think is still going called Dr. Demento, who I've heard of, who's kind of slightly more sort of autistic, nerdy end of the spectrum.
It's all part of that Americana that's fascinating in a way, isn't it? That it's kind of below the level of the corporate media, but it was, as you say, it was both localized, and there was an element maybe of slightly of kitsch about it as well. But you had things like Elvira, as I understand, and you had things like, when you had the amazing Criswell. I don't know if you've heard of him. And he was
Criswell.
I think he was back in the late 50s, early 60s. He was like a news guy who ran out of stories and then started making them up, and then they came true.
Well, he would do predictions, wouldn't he? The amazing Criswell predicts that. Yeah. Well, because I know him through the film Ed Wood, with Johnny Depp.
Plan 9 from Outer Space, I think is
that's right.
So he's in there.
Yeah, he was in that, wasn't he? Yeah, they cast him in that film.
Yeah, and he says something, it's like, incredible events like these in the future will happen to you in the future, and he had this sort of natty kind of hair, and he would predict things like, in the future there will be entire cities populated by gay men, and all sorts of things that eventually sort of come true.
he was thinking about Tel Aviv. Yeah.
What can I say? Yeah. So that's kind of a fun thing. It's not quite the same as, the way you'll get, Radio Lincolnshire or something like that, or BBC,
totally different.
Whatever.
British local radio is a totally different thing.
Yeah.
We can talk. I mean, that's a whole. Not saying it's bad, but it's a whole other style of broadcasting.
And it can kind of become generically local in a way that's concerned with kind of boring stuff. There's not that many Mavericks out there, I'd say. I mean, there's a local radio station near me, but you sort of think, oh God, I live in this place. Why do I want to know stuff about the roads? Or, why do I want to know stuff about stuff that's going on in the shops here? I mean, I'd like someone who is local doing radio, but take me out of this. Don't tell me stuff about, road repairs at this junction, or, something, a charity fete going on at this school or something. It's like, I don't care. Tell me something interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, also you don't really have the personalities anymore. In that a big draw for a lot of smaller radio stations will be that there'd be just one guy on there who was so charismatic or so particular in a way that you'd want to tune in for him.
Well, Penny Everett's been mentioned in the chat, and obviously he was a great sort of favorite of mine back as a lad, especially on the telly, but he was on the radio as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's because obviously radio is still around, but it's so, I mean, unlistenable now, to be brutally honest. I mean, I have a very nice, well, actually, Roberts branded DA radio, and it's very good. And I used to use it a lot, but I don't these days. Not because I don't like it, but just because there's not really anything worth tuning into.
Is it an internet radio or a DAB?
It's a DAB. It's a lovely red leather Roberts DAB.
I would say I would say spend the extra money and get a Roberts internet radio. So you've got
Right.
access, I think, to all the DAB stuff, but you've also got internet radio. So I mean, I've got one by the bed, and you can just tune into any station in the world, and it's amazing the range of stuff. You know, you can tune into police scanners in America. You can tune in. There's railroads in America that have their own radio systems, and you can tune into what the guys are talking about on the railroad systems. Or there's kind of weather stations or airport radios.
Well, yeah, this is it. When I was a kid, I had a phase where I was very interested in like radios, and I bought like a secondhand sort of little internet radio hookup, and I used to occasionally be able to get the ATC. Which I found sort of weirdly sort of nice to have one in the background, just airport radio.
Absolutely, you've got this again. It's a sense of time, isn't it? This sense of tick over of events happening, and you can hear pilots talking to ground control. You've got I mean, there's such a lot of stuff. I mean, there's stations devoted just to playing the sound of rainfall, in various kind of ways. I mean, I have one which I use to get to sleep at night. Rainfall, or even the sound of crackling fireplaces, or there was one called Escape to Cornwall, which used to just be a sort of an ambient mic outside somewhere in Cornwall, just playing the sounds of the sea. And that's gone now. But there's all sorts of stuff, of sounds out there that thousands and thousands, every country. And just you can sort of search by themes of stuff that you're interested in, whether you want to just have like ambient or heavy metal or jazz or whatever.
And also because there's that amazing feeling when you come across something that feels weird, like you shouldn't be listening to it. Like I used to, it took me years before I actually realized what it was. I had to sort of, I mentioned it to another person who was into radio only a couple of years ago, and they were like, oh, I know what that was. That was so and so. But I used to tune in, and it would be like at weird times in the middle of the night, this sort of American preacher. Just going on for hours and hours and hours and hours on end.
Yes.
Just to what felt like a small crowd, and there was this guy his name was Brother Stare, and he was like a radio preacher who basically had like a sort of cult in the early 2000s, like a doomsday cult, sort of sell all your possessions, and the world's going to end and all this kind of thing. And he's dead now, I think. But I think he went to prison for a while because of improprieties, as these people tend to do, and obviously being a bit of a fraudster. And they would his organization still to this day play just old tapes of him preaching on the radio. And because I didn't know what it was, and there was no way to look up who it was, I used to sit there and go like, what is this? Because it's like, should I be listening to this? Is this some sort of weird thing? And because local, I don't know. I mean, this is quite an obscure thing, but local, like some mosques in Britain have like their own little local radio broadcast as well. I mean, I always imagine they're actually sat in like the big dome at the top of the mosque, like with a radio mic broadcasting.
And that's fascinating, isn't it? The idea of these little subcultures. I mean, we've talked about this with reference to this show of just you crash into a conversation halfway through. You don't introduce anything. You don't give framing and context. You just let people work it out as they go along. It's like when you watch a good film, how you go, and the expositional moments of films, you're often sitting there in the cinema going, what's going on? I don't understand. What's that mean? How does that? And of course, eventually you trust in the art of the filmmaker that you will pick these things up as you go along. And there's kind of people who are very tiresome. I don't understand what's going on. And they kind of loudly protest that not everything isn't kind of laid out on a fucking silver platter for them. And actually what you need to do, like with lots of art, let's say, lots of culture, just sit and just absorb it, give it time, trust in the artist, things will come together and things will align and land in a way that you will suddenly become incorporated. And as you say, it's like finding a secret dangerous code that you are being kind of exposed or let in on. And gradually you build up a kind of an arcane knowledge, which for many other people is remote and they're excluded from it. But you've got some sort of access. As you're talking, it reminded me again of things like you used to have the numbers stations. I don't know if you know about these things where.
Yes, I was going to mention this. Yeah.
You might want to say something, but the famous one in England is the one called the Lincolnshire Poacher.
That's right. Yes, when it plays a tune, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
very much of the Cold
creepy.
War period.
But can you imagine just like being some kid fiddling with a radio and you
Yeah.
just tune into that by mistake? Like you'd be terrified, wouldn't you? It's
Absolutely.
weird,
These weird voices, these kind of disembodied voices on the air reading out. I mean, usually for people who don't know, the number stations were essentially intelligence services broadcasting to agents in the field in other countries, and they would be voices that would be reading sequences of numbers like 4, 6, 7, 8, 5, 3, 1, 2. 9, 7, 8, 6, and these would be all part of number codes. They would have agents would have code books which they could transcribe the numbers down and use these kind of code book templates to lay over the numbers, which would then transliterate to letters, and that would give a coded message. Off a one-time pad, usually I think they would call it. It's very much of the sort of thing that you have in, if you've ever seen the film The Fourth Protocol with Pierce Brosnan and Michael Caine. About the Russian agent in England. He gets he doesn't quite get a number station thing, but he gets like a broadcast on Radio Moscow to tell him to activate the bomb that he has to set off. So it's that quite interesting feeling of sometimes these messages that are floating over the airwaves are subversive in all kinds of ways you can't even think. And sometimes they are part of this hidden world of the security state, seemingly innocuous, but at the same time deeply kind of intriguing and eerie when you kind of hear them as well. It might be a woman's voice, a man's voice. It might have music in the background, or like you say, a little sort of recognition sting, or other noises in between to kind of help you as the agent locate it with your covert radio set. I mean, I don't know if any of these things still exist anymore. Obviously, there are radio systems that are still in use for security services, but I don't know. But it's a
they do. I think
side.
all the old number stations are still going because, as you say, they're used by governments and security agencies to transmit orders. Because of course, the thing about radio is it can be jammed, but it's far easier to, if you're say a Russian agent somewhere in the middle of a field in South Africa, you'll be able to get that signal, whereas you wouldn't be able to if it was say a direct internet or satellite broadcast, because they're easier to fiddle with, I think. And also I've always, in a similar sort of vein, going around the internet, especially in my teens, and discovering all these sort of old abandoned podcasts and streams with sort of like 30 views that people had done years ago. They'd stopped, didn't know who they were, and you just kind of come across them. And I love the idea that maybe, I mean, obviously I hope that we'll go on to slightly bigger things on here, but I hope that in like 20 years from now, someone might just stumble across this stream, and I wonder what they're doing now. I wonder what this was for, or where they were going with it.
Yeah, there's always that element of the internet that has decayed and passed away. And I mean, Mark Fisher on the K-Punk blog used to talk about this, that as blogs came and went, you would have old blogs that are on the internet, but they're there kind of like drifting hulks in cyberspace, waiting to be boarded. The Mary Celestes, that drift into a view, and you find, I don't know, is there any of that kind of old internet 1.0 stuff out there, where you drift across these old kind of style websites, and they've often got like dead, real audio links or things like that, sort of formats that we no longer really use, or they've got little clips of grainy video from that time, or they've got maybe links to directories and files and stuff of interest that you increasingly feel is being hoovered up. Like we've talked on Deepest Law before, right? You do research and you just can't find stuff. It's either a 404 page, or it's a, it's simply being vanished, or it's a placeholder for a corporate, internet real estate.
Well, this is it, because of course, links will eventually die, websites will go down, domains will, someone will stop paying the domain and it will go down. I mean, a lot, the internet is not really forever in the way that people think it is. A lot of it will eventually fade away.
It is nice to find those little patches though, where something old is like some old forum,
like late 90s internet. That is good.
I used to be on the Cooked and Bombed forum, the sort of Chris Morris, Peter Cook comedy forum, back when it started, 26 years ago. And I could sort of still log into my account, which is strange, but the forum's completely changed and all the old stuff has gone. The old kind of easy to navigate format, and all the people are, just weirdos now. I mean, it kind of got colonized by the wrong kind of people, and
Yeah.
but I mean, I think AA has talked about this as well, hasn't he? The sort of the old forum style, which had a certain level of kind of like a gentleman's club, a certain level of privileged access. If you were the wrong person behaving wrongly, you were modded out, and certain people got to stay and have the conversations, and yet now, where are they? I mean, there's so much of value that may have just, it should have just been left. I mean, is it taking up any server space, any significant amount? Couldn't it have just been, put in a kind of internet safari park that you can go? I mean, there's the Wayback Machine, I suppose, but it's not the same feeling. It's if the sites are just there and left, it would just be nice if they could just drift.
This was a bit before me, but I used to sort of, I mean, it was kind of ghostly, by the time I discovered them, but those old chat rooms where it was just like, there was no topic filter. It was just a single sort of chat log.
Yeah.
And with just people talking in it. And like, there was no way to sort of direct. It was a single chat. There were no side rooms. It was just one long thing. There was no reply function. You just had to kind of use it as it was. And of course, the chat room became kind of synonymous in the media with, dodgy people on the internet, kind of, catfishing and, that kind of thing. But it was just kind of, as you say, internet 1.0 type communication, wasn't it?
Did you find emotionally adjusting to the internet as a person, growing up in this century, was at all taxing or difficult in any way? Because I obviously came to the internet in adulthood and had to kind of learn about internet sensibilities, the way that, the idea of a troll, right? We just didn't understand it at first. It seemed like people were just being wantonly vicious. But then there's this sort of sensibility that I've grown to understand where there's a level of fun, and actually it's not unkind, but it can appear to outsiders to be something cruel.
In a way, it was the opposite, and that was the internet I was kind of brought up into, where you'd see people mucking around and trolling and all this kind of thing, and you still have the forums, and you had like weird little websites to watch like funny videos and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And as you say, that the sensibility seemed natural to me because that's what the internet was when I was introduced to it. And then the sad thing was it almost immediately got ripped away by the invention of the dawn of the corporate internet and the kind of end. I don't really think of the internet. I think of the internet as being a place that's gone. What we have now isn't really quote the internet as such. I mean,
today's like a shopping mall of the internet.
Yeah, or like it's like the dying shopping mall of the internet. I mean, are you familiar with dead internet theory?
Sort of ish. Just one moment. I'm just going to sort of sound effect incoming. I'm going to open a can of drink. It's just an energy drink. Don't worry. Just thought I'd say that first. So, I mean, dead internet theory. Remind me. Obviously, I've come across the term, but I don't remember anymore.
Broadly speaking, the dead internet theory is the idea that the internet is becoming or is largely now inhabited by bots rather than real people. Okay. So a lot of the content that gets put out there, a lot of all the posts, replies to things are just bots. Even the ones that seem relatively real are just bots. I mean, there are degrees of the theory. So some people say it's roughly 50-50 real people to bots. There are some say it's as drastic as like 90-10, in that it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Simon and I are actually both AIs. We're not real people. I was made in a computer lab in Hong Kong. So I'm not real. But yes, it was.
Yeah.
I mean, and also I think that what made the early internet feel good as well was that you had to have a certain level of opportunity cost to get into it. In that computers weren't cheap. You had to have access to one. You had to you had to know how to log into things, and I mean to a lot of people, older people, none of this was intuitive, and it wasn't like you could just take out your phone and log on to something. You had to sit at a PC and log in and do all this kind of stuff. So it meant that you had that there was a sense that there was a bit of an exclusivity to it. An exclusivity of sort of nerds and kind of slightly odd people, but that was a good thing. They weren't just bland sort of normie types, because of course what interest would the early internet have to normies? You had to be you had to have a reason to log on to it, basically.
Yes Gosh, It is interesting thinking about. I mean, this is I know I'm referencing Adam Curtis again, but it is a theme he sort of talks about a lot. That if we can only take it back from, the venture capitalists now and return it to some sort of sense of a kind of frontier of networked connection between people that has. I mean, that ideal, I suppose, of a self-stabilizing system, it seems naive in the way that libertarianism perhaps seems naive, but the sense of it not being just a kind of a corporatized shopping mall experience, I mean, yes, obviously you find people who create, if you like, artistic and diverting sites, which sort of capture something of that. But the increasing need to monetize and to paywall and to subscribe, I mean, it's obviously completely ludicrous for me to be sitting here saying that at the same time. I understand, given that we are holding our hands out for subscription.
But we're not a corporation, Simon. We're the bona fide thing.
We are,
and I think our audience knows that. So it's don't give money to the people that that deserve it. I don't know if I'd go that far, but you know what I mean. Yeah. I've just realised the music bed has run out, so I'm going to put another one on anyway, and we'll eventually we will drift towards our John Betjeman mini documentary, because it's only short. Drift being the good word, though. I think perhaps for this one we'll make an exception, but I think that in future, the Sunday Studio should just be talking music. There shouldn't be because I think the idea is that you should be able to just have this. You don't have to look at it. It's just audio. It's just us talking with a bit of background music.
I think so. Another thing I looked at last night, which I was going to bring up, I want to bring this up, is I looked at another Will Self conversation, but one that he had with Slavoj Zizek, who we've sort of talked about, and it's a conversation they had at the Emmanuel Center, I think, back in 2013. And it's another side of Will, I think, because he later talked about Zizek being a bit of a buffoon. And I probably wouldn't go that far. I think there's interesting things in there. But Will comes across as very bad-tempered with the whole thing. And he's having this public conversation with Zizek about his book, The Courage of Hopelessness.
Yeah.
Which in a way is a very Spenglerian kind of theme. The difference between what Zizek was proposing and Spengler is that Zizek is saying we need to abandon these illusions about what is happening, and for Spengler, I suppose it's much a question of civilizations have a cycle and a death phase, and we're going into that, and the thing is to just resign yourself to that and live it out as best you can in an honorable way. And Zizek is kind of operating from the same logic, but he's leaving room to say, because he's a materialist, because he's a Marxist, that we can create conditions for some sort of change, not necessarily revolutionary change in the way that we're thinking about with the Bolsheviks, but we have the ability to, as Adam Curtis pushes, imagine something different and enact it. And it's a very tetchy conversation that they have, and Will is sort of saying, no, come on, Slavoj, you can't just get away with all these one-liners all the time. Tell us what we need to do. And it's as a result, it's not very productive. It's a slightly disappointing side of Will, that he kind of he's kind of prepared to stand up to Zizek, who tends to digress a lot, but he's not really prepared to kind of hear him out. He tries to keep him on track admirably, so it's useful, but there's a tension there that Will is somebody who kind of comes looking for a bit of a scrap, But
to be fair, as I said last time, I'm more on Will's Self side there, in that I do think Slavoj Zizek leans too heavily on basically just saying, but let us get away from ideology and illusion. Yeah, but okay, but that's such a loaded.
Well, that's the contrast in the debate that Will is doing, and Slavoj Zizek acknowledges, yes, you are being the English empiricist. Yes, okay, I will be empirical, and he tries to go there, but the problem with Slavoj is he keeps wandering and digressing, and then he wants to tell you a joke from the Soviet Union, and then it all kind he gets tangled up.
This is it. I think sometimes Slavoj phones it in. To a degree that I find unacceptable, where he kind of just, as you say, he rambles. And again, obviously it's hypocritical of me to say that, and I am not interested in analytic,
Yeah.
heavily logical, everything has to be
Vi-
empirical type philosophy.
Vingel
I'm
in the
much more
chat.
of a continental. You know.
Vingel in the chat is saying, "Leave my boy Slavoj alone." I'm not. I'm certainly not attacking
We're
Slavoj.
we're friends.
I find him interesting.
We're friends of Slavoj on this channel. We
Yeah,
have respect. We have respect for the post Marxist left.
It's
you know?
it's the thing though that it's not so much him as a person. It's the idiosyncrasies of intellectuals who, when you put them in a room together, it is like cats fighting. They just kind of want to go and attack each other. And you think, oh, can't you just have a conversation? Because I can't follow either one of you at this point. I'd like to hear what Will has to say and what he thinks. What does Slavoj think? Can Slavoj funnel what he's thinking into something that's more legible for us to actually deal with and less kind of theoretic? And can Will entertain the idea that Slavoj is making a broad brush critique that, you know, he's articulating in theoretical terms, but we need to tease out what are the practical implications of that?
Yes, but also I think that's kind of the function of it, though, is that you kind of want them to have a go at each other in a way, because it'll force them to really defend their positions, because all the people that go to a Slavoj event will just be like 20-something-year-old female art student with a ring in her nose who doesn't actually have any understanding of the practicals. It's just lefty stuff makes her feel good. So that audience isn't going to put Zizek onto a footing where he has to actually be muscular about his intellectuality, whereas Will Self will. He will say, "Well, okay, that's all well and good, Slavoj, but what are we actually going to do in response to that?" Well,
he is quite funny, yeah.
But that's good because that is what someone like Zizek needs. He needs that kind of.
He does.
You can't just say, "Oh, it's all terrible," and tell a Soviet joke, because I mean, if you're going to do that, then don't present it as serious intellectual critique.
I mean, I totally agree. Absolutely, this is the problem. I was musing earlier before we went on about getting guests on, and you sort of want to get guests on, but you don't want them to be so irascible that you can't, learn anything. But at the same time, you don't want to strip out their mojo that makes them interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
So if they are going to fight, well, I guess they're going to fight. But it's kind of it was frustrating for an hour, because you thought, oh, these are two really interesting minds. Why can't we get something that we can sort of retain a thread of understanding and work through? But they're just both so they're at such high octane levels that they can't be mixed.
Yeah.
Which feels a shame to me. I mean, but they're both interesting in their place. I mean, I've enjoyed both of them. I think this is the thing about intellectuals who are not necessarily on our side and have very fertile minds, have this interest for us, but it's trying to translate and trying to operationalize what they say into something we can recognize as well and find useful.
Well, and also for me, the big problem with most of these intellectuals is you scratch the surface. When you get further down, they're just a liberal. They're just a liberal, unafraid to challenge the orthodoxy. I mean, they'll just have all the same liberal price. It's like, well, you are. I mean, you can call yourself whatever you want, but if you're just a liberal, you're just a liberal, and I just haven't got time for that, right? I think a big issue with intellectuals now is just cowardice. I mean, not one of them is actually willing to challenge the fundamentals of the regime we live in. And if you're not willing to do that, then what's the point?
Yes. Yes.
You have to do these things, or else you're just grifting along, selling books to on the pop table at Waterstones.
Yeah.
And I think as much as I like his work, Mark Fisher was guilty of this. I think to a certain extent, he didn't. A lot of his critiques were just aren't corporations and billionaires bad, but they never really got beyond they never really got to the grip of what the.
Well, it's kind of the least interesting part of his writing for me as well. I mean, I'm interested in this sort of expansiveness and imagination of the cultural theory. And when it gets onto the thing of, I went to a protest today and I chatted with these people and we talked about this, and isn't it terrible? I mean, I find that some of the least interesting stuff. Incidentally, he also contributed to a blog on football, apparently. I didn't know. He was actually into his football. So baffling. There you go. It happens. Intellectuals sometimes like football as well. But I know what you're saying. There is a gosh, I don't know how to take it any further.
Well, there's like a bed of certain things for some reason they just can't challenge.
Yeah,
it's like, and that's what marks out people like us. I think is that we just go straight through it like a knife. It's like, well, hang on a minute, you can't. But no, because it's the thing of you can't say, oh, I'm against capitalism and I'm against this monstrous corporate deformation of the human being. But mass immigration is great. Those are two alien sentences. You can't consistently have that position. You know, challenge it or don't challenge it. Never go halfway.
Yes. Do you think we have any in England? Any public intellectuals? I kind of slightly cringe when I say that, but people who we find genuinely interesting enough, because obviously a lot of it is imported European intellectuals, you know. You know, people on the left are either getting Slavoj Žižek in or Yanis Varoufakis, you know, and I can't stand him. But you know, and the other in the other part of that breath, people say public intellectuals, and they say, oh, Douglas Murray, and I think,
yeah, but no, there's I think the type of intellectual you mean is like beyond newspaper journalist. You know, he's not like Douglas Murray, even if what he said were credible, would still just be basically just a journalist with ideas, you know. I think probably we had Alistair McIntyre until relatively recently when he passed away, the late Professor McIntyre, who I had the great privilege to have quite a few conversations with when he visited Cardiff University while I was there. Okay. Because he's someone who really did get down to the absolute fundamentals and the metaphysics of the present society and basically take it apart.
Can you tell us a little bit about him? Because I'm really not familiar.
So Alistair McIntyre basically was a philosopher who worked primarily in the field of ethics, and he made a bit of a storm. I think it was in the 70s or slightly before, actually. As a young professor, he wrote a book called After Virtue,
right?
Which looked at the moral underpinnings of society, and said that basically we're in a total mess. In that it's not that it's so much wrong as inconsistent. And he likened it to the discovery of science after the Roman collapse, in that somebody would find, say, half a manuscript dealing with some concept, or fragments of this and that, and it takes a long time to bring it all together. And he said the state of modern morality and ethics is essentially that we have fragments of various schools of thought, but we don't have any consistency. What that leads to is basically sort of abominable practice at the ground level. And he said, obviously, this is the big issue with liberalism: is it kind of just picks and chooses, but to an incoherent degree. And he basically argued that there needs to be less overt centralization and more of a kind of focus on the kind of moral locality, if you like, in that different groups of people. And not just ethnically or culturally, but even lower down to that, will necessarily have different moral codes in that kind of way. And I'm giving, this is a really reductionist way to put it, but I do recommend everybody reads After Virtue, because it's a really, really good book to get started with in terms of looking at how to kind of philosophically rebuild a society that's so far gone. And he later became kind of very interested in St. Augustine and Thomas Aquinas, and he never became a kind of annoying sort of script thomist, kind of doing everything through kind of Aristotelian logic. But he did move more towards that as actually a coherent way to think, because he said, well, you can't really build a coherent moral system without something extraneous. In that you do need a god, or you need some concept of some greater morality to look up to in order for any of this to work. And he was pretty bold in saying that, it being an intellectual in the past 50 years, to say, no, actually, you do need religion, basically, or some extraneous moral code. But him until recently, until he died. Other than that, I don't really know. I mean, you got people like Geoffrey Hill, who through poetry and through their lectures would give a kind of really excoriating sort of Old Testament like critique of what he called sort of modern detritus and the oligarchical plutocracy we live in. Other than that, I mean, you could probably find really niche ones and sort of still lecturing in Oxford, chapels and things, but I don't think they'd really count as public then, because they wouldn't be well known enough.
Yes.
I'm not
so
really
you don't think there's any kind of visible inheritor for this at the moment?
No, not at all. Not at all. Unless I may just be ignorant of him or her, but I don't.
And of course, you always suspect that if there was anybody interesting, you wouldn't hear about them, because they wouldn't be sufficiently propelled by PR into the limelight anyway.
And again, this isn't me saying, oh yeah, if you're gonna be an intellectual, you have to be able to do like sort of right wing chud type talking points. It's not that. It's that you have to be able to consider certain things. You have to the job of a scholar or an intellectual is to have no boundary in terms of intellectual mapping, right? You go to the very edge of the map as far as you can push it. You consider everything. So, and it's quite obvious, even when someone's talking about something unrelated, that they haven't done that in regards to moral and political ethics. In that they just remain terrified of liberal priors to the extent that they won't even think about them. They won't even turn them over in their mind. Why should it be this way? Everything. That's the job of an intellectual. Question everything. It's a very, very important role in human society.
And more or less everybody is absorbed, as Will Self would say, in the spectacle of Guy Debord.
Well, this is it, and also because I think we have reached a point of kind of true nihilism, where nothing, like, at the end of the day, it's all just it's clothing. You can just wear the clothes, of a particular thing. That's the thing. There's a huge amount of grift in, if you're left wing, putting on your university lanyard and going up and saying, oh, isn't it? It's awful. I think that we haven't got, enough black people in universities. And if you're right wing, you put on a suit and you go into a cheap, a cheap studio with a podcast mic and go bloody mass migration. It's all just the same grift. It's not serious thinking. It's not serious ideas.
There you go. Le de nihilisme en studio dimanche avec Panama et Simon.
L'heure de mélancolie. Now here's Barry White. Yeah. I love the idea of doing some really, really dead end, or it's all over, it's all terrible. And then it's just, and now here's Nat Gonella and his Georgians with Swing That Rag from 1931. Let's do that.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I do actually have break music planned. If we have to take a 2-minute sort of hiatus at any point, I can put on the song "Shaving Cream" by Benny Bell, which is just because it's out of copyright. It's rubbish bit of old novelty music, but it is prepared.
Yes. Okay. Oh, that sounds interesting. At any point we want to fade that current music bed down, we can always give a try and see what we can do. We, as we said today, we had a little bit of a plan of looking at an old a documentary, A Poet in London, which featured John Betjeman, which was on the Monitor BBC cultural strand back in the early 60s. And I think it's one that you and I have admired for some time, isn't it? We talked about even trying to recreate elements of it, because in a way it's Betjeman in his own psychogeography, musing amidst the ruins of post-war London that have not been quite rebuilt yet, and there is this lingering haunting of the Victorian industrial London that is there in these fragments, especially around the public transport system and these what we'd call the liminals between zones, between residential, commercial, the parts of the connective tissue of the city around which he stands and muses with his peculiar tone of urban elegiac. Would that be a right way of describing him in that sort of documentary?
Yeah, I think that's true, though it's not all sort of I don't want to give people the impression it's just kind of, oh, woe is me, London's
rubbish
these days type
stuff.
stuff.
Not that at all.
You and I have indulged in that, but no, it's much more kind of true poeticizing, if you like, in that he's placing himself in a world, in a locale, in a kind of, well, as we'd say, in a psychogeographical space, and he's kind of he's applying as you say, yes, he's applying kind of the elegiac mode to it.
He's not melancholy. He's observing the working girls, and he's observing the kind of flows and drifts of the city. And it's just that this weird time that you referenced Blow Up earlier, which is this film that takes place kind of almost at the end or in the midst of that rebuilding period, that you're driving around a city where new modernist blocks of offices are going up at the same time as you're driving past the ruined pits created by bomb creators and buildings of which the facades maybe only remain, as well as some of the old infrastructure which we know in time will be swept away. Some of the lovely old infrastructure, especially in Blow Up, that you see around the park, where the street where he parks his car near the antique shop, I mean, that's all gone. which is such a shame because they were beautiful old houses. And you think, why on earth did we wipe that off the face of the city? They were structurally sound, good-looking buildings. Now they'd be worth a mint, and now you've put social housing on them and it looks vile. I mean, what? Why?
Yeah, and
Help?
I think probably where we'd take it, that people of Benjamin's generation wouldn't, is it isn't just sort of some ghostly force of modernization. It's because people do actually hate you. the elites personally despise you and what the things you like. Remember that,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
Always, never ever forget that fundamentally that is just basically true.
Yeah, it wasn't just emergent architecture, I think, is what you're saying. It was
no. This is people they despise you and everything you stand for.
Oh,
and they
no.
want to hurt you.
It's deliberately vindictive technocratic design.
That's right.
What a
And now here's Captain Sensible with Happy Talk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there is for us, obviously, looking back, a great a sense of the twilight and the poignancy of that, insofar as you see the smoke blackened buildings and the sort of, you know, grime and grit of parts of London. There's a sense that we, you know, the way things like the Euston Arch were swept away, pieces of, you know, the city's grandeur that just had no need to disappear. I mean, there's just I think the Euston Arch is a good example because there's just simply space there now. And they've actually, I think the Euston Arch was broken up, smashed and dropped into a river somewhere. And then years later, bits of it were fished out and have been placed around the site where the Euston Arch used to stand. So it seemed vaguely pointless. You know, it's like smashing down the Acropolis completely and then bringing back bits years later and setting them up as kind of artistic ruins. And you think, why didn't you just leave it in the first place? I mean, you can talk more on Chesterton's fence than I, but I mean, you know, even those things which may not have had a necessary, you know, utility in the engineering of the city, maybe just have a decorative aspect and a sort of a sense of witnessing to history that we should just simply keep because.
Yeah, well, I mean, Betjeman was instrumental in saving St Pancras railway station. Can you believe they were going to just knock that down?
Oh yeah,
you know. Because you'd assume that would be on the level of, you know, the Palace of Westminster or St Paul's in terms of, like, you wouldn't even consider. I mean, like, why the hell would you knock it down? It's nothing like there wasn't anything wrong with it. I mean, it probably needed a bit of a you know, an upkeep as buildings do. But the idea that they were just going to demolish that, which let's remember as well, if you had £1 billion and you had the power to do it, and you said, build me an exact one-on-one, materially accurate replica of St Pancras Station. Yeah, you couldn't do it. It couldn't be done. In the a lot of the craft techniques used to build that, and a lot of the people who were able to provide the smaller details of the building, the skills don't exist anymore. I mean, some of the materials don't exist anymore. For anybody, remember, it's that valuable. Anybody not familiar with London, listening outside the UK, in Europe or America, do look up St Pancras Station. Yeah. Do look at the building. I mean, it's and as you say, I always found it astonishing years ago when, you know, people talked about, oh yeah, it's all going to be knocked down. You look at it, it's basically, you know, what's it referred to as a Gothic revival, basically. Yeah, it's glorious. Victorian Gothic, and it is astonishing. And you think, and it was just the you know, certainly the building was there, has been there for decades, and you look at it and you think, wow, that's magnificent. And oh yeah, we're going to knock it down. You think, what? I mean, if anything in the city, it's an astonishing work, and you know, centrally placed in London, you know, by you know, a major transport hub. And you think, why on earth would that be your first thing? Why would you not, you know, the idea that this building is somehow no longer viable? I mean, okay, I can understand. I don't understand economics, yes, and sometimes things are not I'm not economically viable, as he says in Falling Down. But for some reason, there's this weird particular form of British sort of particularity. Yeah. But we have this idea that, it has to happen because, you know, and it's not, as you say, non-economically viable anymore. Or, well, who's going to be able to afford the upkeep? Pretty much every other European country, France, Spain, Italy is the huge example. The government just slaps a preservation order on it, and then they have to maintain it. Yeah. And it's like, so people say, but why should we pay for it? Well, the tiny costs it takes to keep up an old building relatively compared to the billions that get wasted, right, on random other things. It's nothing to do. I never ever use the fucking market as a baseline to judge what should be and what shouldn't be. It's ludicrous. Unless you are literally running a business, then it isn't. There is no point in doing that, and it will just lead to desecration and destruction.
Yeah. I see people in the chat saying, "Oh, we don't have anything like this in the States." I mean, I wonder if there have been things like that in the US. I mean, we've seen all those places that, like Detroit, that are all kind of burned out, and there's all these places that is. I mean, I just wonder if there are things that are there, but they're so minimized and they're so marketized in the sense that they are just waiting to be vulnerable to the wrecking ball, and they're just going to go. And I wonder if things have been built that have just been swept away without people noticing because of America's size and the spacious, the consciousness of space that you might have differently there. But with us, obviously, London, all the things you see on postcards, the sort of monuments, I mean, a lot of it's within a very small area. And you think you can't but help see those things when you're going. Whereas, of course, in American cities, of course, they may be vast, they may be spread out. You may not see some of these marvelous places that just linger, and they're then just wiped away quietly. Whereas, we have this thing of the thing is super conspicuous. And even you think, even if you just leave the outside and just gut the inside, it's still a magnificent outside. I mean, even just if it were a shell. But
exactly.
But nonetheless, we have this very strange utilitarian view in this country when it comes to the civic space that I don't know. Yeah, as you say, there should just be a completely arbitrary. Well, it's beautiful and it's brilliant, and we keep it, and that's it. It isn't an argument.
The gentleman in the chat that mentioned America. I mean, the really sad thing is that during what was called the heroic age of American architecture, all the kind of huge, grand Art Deco buildings, enormous railway termini, and office towers and this kind of thing. Really, really beautiful. And it was actually a way to meld together the force of American money, if you like, the kind of that part of the American soul that calls for everything to be huge and epic.
Yeah.
In a way that was also artistically breathtaking.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff all got torn down in the 60s and 70s. It was just demolished. I mean, the northern plain cities, Chicago, Detroit, they suffered terribly with this. I mean, pretty much all those old buildings were just flattened, and a lot of them weren't replaced. They're just empty lots. It wasn't even like they built anything to replace it. So yeah, I mean, similar thing in America. This hateful people in charge, but also just because it doesn't matter, just get rid of it, doesn't mean anything, get rid of it, we'll build something more profitable there. It's really, really awful what they've done to cities, and thank God we still have examples all over Europe where things weren't treated that way, there are some places in the Americas too where things thankfully were preserved. I mean, Betjeman spent a huge amount of time running these campaigns to save these buildings, and generally it was a case that the authorities that were going to demolish them were doing it on the sly. They wouldn't tell anyone they were going to do it. They'd suddenly do it. Oh, it's a fait accompli now. Everything's already arranged,
Yeah.
So his job was largely just blowing the horn and going, look, they're planning to do this. We must build up a campaign to stop it. And yeah, he saved a number of buildings like that. And in fact, there's now a wonderful statue of him in St. Pancras as the kind of savior of the building, if you like. And there's one of Philip Larkin somewhere as well, because Philip Larkin wasn't a campaigner for saving the buildings, but just I think it was a similar design of station statue, poet on the way to catch a train type thing.
It is this thing that I've talked about perhaps on other streams as well before. Buildings. I mean, town centres, civic places near me. Essentially what's happening is we're in the process of the business is being ground down. So councils are preventing you from parking without being fined or paying lots of money. They're allowing places to slip into degradation. And, there's a very cynical kind of view that's operant in this, that they want these places to be basically made unviable. The fabric starts to fall into disrepair. The council inspectors can again come along and say, oh, look, it's falling into disrepair. Oh, it's dangerous now. Oh, well, I suppose we have to knock it down, because what they want to do is just sell the plots off for, off-plan residential, which will be, built over at a higher density. And you think, there's such a short-sightedness in this, in the way I think I've also talked before about the way the East London Docklands were rehabilitated in the 1980s. Places like, around Canary Wharf, where they made apartments for people to live, but they didn't locate the communities. They didn't give them any kind of civic anchors like parks or, even what the left cultural theorists would call third places, where you can go to recuperate outside your house or work. And to anchor a community. And this is what's happening here is, well, you turn everything into residential, so everything becomes residential, and then there are shops, and then there's nothing else in between. So you become in a kind of dormitory conurbation, where the only purpose of the streets is just to have houses. It's not to have a gallery or a pub or anything like that. It's purely to sort of stack you in your box. And boxes, and lead to this kind of very strange sense of purposelessness in the urban landscape. What am I here for? There's no park. There's no place to go. There is no nice coffee shop to look at the view, because there is no view. There is only some crappy, badly designed apartment with terrible materials that will weather really badly, and it will look shit in a couple of years. But that is the town now. The town has been evacuated of the meaning of a town. It's it could have been a market town, a centre of trade flows, or it could have been a historic site. But now it's just another looked upon as another sort of economic opportunity. I've had a rant.
Yeah, well, it's yes, and I mean it's sort of the feeling of being stuck at the bottom of the hole, isn't it? In that you can't. There's nothing to move forward to. In that it would be one thing if we had some kind of plan or outline in terms of what we were doing with any of this stuff, because I mean even the much maligned brutalists had a philosophy. There was a theory behind it. I mean, a lot of brutalism, I feel, really was badly applied as opposed to being bad in and of itself. Especially here in the UK, where essentially the planners chose brutalism because they could do it the cheapest.
Yeah,
and that was basically, and also because they were just cramming people into a concrete block. The sort of horror of it all. But the actual philosophy behind brutalism is much more interesting, and I think it depends on the placement. In that, I've seen some genuinely beautiful brutalist buildings in the south of France, where you have this lush, hilly atmosphere around the building. It was also very big in Brazil at one point, and I mean, obviously what they built as the capital in Brazil is quite awful. But when it's an atmosphere surrounded by lush green tropical colors, the brutalist building can work quite well by contrast. What you don't want to do is be living in an absolutely rundown estate in Glasgow and bung a big concrete block in the middle of it. Oh, great, that'll help. That'll make it look better. That'll make the people here less depressed and want to kill themselves. It's mainly because it was used as a weapon against people, I think.
Exactly. A weapon against Londoners' lingering desire for the freedoms of city life, as Patrick Keeler said. It does become a method of constraint, and it becomes a subject and focus of corruption, especially in England. That's why the execution of it was so often very, very poor, and there was a sort of short-sightedness in terms of the experimentation with things like materials, where you saw that, well, you think, well, that facade isn't going to weather very well given the English climate. It's not going to lend itself to a kind of poetic vista in 20 years. It's going to be run down. It's going to be covered in graffiti. It's going to crack. There was a sense in which maybe you just want to start by showing us what you can do, giving us, like you have experimental home designs, or sort of the things that if Mies van der Rohe was building, certain kinds of display type homes, that he did, where you may not necessarily want to live in them, but they give you a sort of vision of the future, or something that could be like a future that you could live in. And you don't have to sort of say, we need to build vast estates of this. Of course, there is usually an imperative of Britain of, chuck it up quickly and cheaply and get it done and get people, in there. But there is no sense of, could we make this artistic? Could we make this something which could actually, create flourishing locus of a community, or is it simply going to be a sort of provocative experiment by an architect who hates us? And it's kind of conflicted in Britain, as you say. You had these architects, the Smithsons, who were the sort of pioneers, but there were certain things about the ideas with brutalism of, making it kind of unadorned and raw, and the concrete looked sort of unfinished, and there was an emphasis on a kind of a proletarian bulk quality. But I don't know that all the time you look at these things, they're particularly sparkling examples. Some may look great, and they may be offset by the way in which they're located in certain kinds of grounds and areas that are shaped and couturied to look as if they support and complement the building. But of course, in Britain, you get this thing of people just plonk things down next to each other, and there's a sort of flimsy architectural justification. Oh, isn't it marvelous what variety you've got? But sometimes you see things which, wasn't there an extension to one of the museums in London that was just like a sort of a glass cube smashed down onto the side of, is it the V&A? I'm wondering.
Yeah, I think it was the British Museum that had that. I can't remember, but it was one of those beautiful old, gorgeous imperial museum buildings, vast, wonderful buildings.
Let's look like we're attacking the building that's originally there instead of.
Well, that's it. But that's what the point is. That is that is the whole point of it. Is just iconoclasm. It's just stuffy old imperialist, colonialist, blah 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 blah. We'll just show how much we hate it. We'll throw a cube at it. Nonsense.
Yes, I think we're quite exercised about beauty in the built environment, and quite rightly too.
We are indeed, and I'm sure our viewers are as well. It's important, and it's annoying to have to watch everything decay. So
it is, especially as we've talked about before. We've both lived in London. You now, I've lived there in the past for a long period, and again, it's the the tension in that relationship of being in a place which has got a lot of energy, a lot of excitement in many ways, and a lot of money, and also that has been meshed together with the most unfortunate social and political policy that we've seen for some time. So there's always that sense of potential that is being not just missed, but being sort of actively thwarted or damaged by what happens, which is kind of tragic, especially when you think of it. There's some of the most expensive real estate in the world.
Yes. It's the inhumanity of it, really. As I say, they hate the idea of anything holistic or pleasant for the individual. That's the ideology, if you like, behind it. It's just hatred. No government that cared about its people would build monstrosities such as they do.
So what should we do? Should we have a look at Betjeman's Poet in London, do you think?
Let's do that, but I need to run out and refresh my glass. So, Simon, why don't you, to the melodious tunes of the house band under Mr. Giscard, conducting away like mad in the corner there, why don't you fill the gap, do a bit of shilling for us, and
Absolutely.
60-second hold of it, and I will be back where we will watch Betjeman's Poet in London.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Morn, my compatriot studio host, Panama Hat. Yes, thank you very much for tuning in today. We are Sunday Studio Dimanche on the Panama Hat channel. And we do encourage you to go to our Ko-Fi, which is the Panama Hat Ko-Fi, which is at ko-fi.com/Panama Hat. That's ko-fi.com/Panama Hat, all one word, and lavish us with all of your money. Well, no, not all of your money. Some of your money would be nice, merely so we can keep the lights on, as they say, although it is ridiculous. I mean, I am just paying the power bill, really, and the lights are, well, they're not on right now, obviously, because it's the middle of the day, but the computer is on. I'm paying for that. I'm paying for whatever else electrical is working in my house. Luckily, it's not winter, so I don't have the gas on, which is nice. But the naughty power company did send me an email the other day saying they were going to whack up my power bill by about £42 every month, which, I mean, I'm not an unkind man, but that is taking the piss. So we are going to have to all find the readies with which to support our extravagant lifestyles. I can't tell you how many bags of scallops I've had to buy this week, and the caviar and the fine wines. I mean, it's just outrageous, the cost of living these days, don't you know? To be quite honest, I don't live a very extravagant lifestyle at all, but I do like to go down to London sometime to see my friends, including Panama Hat, and to go and look at things like theatre shows, exhibitions, and wander the streets in a kind of flaneurish kind of way. And we would like to sort of do things like that in order to give you some sort of observation and entertainment. We are thinking of various kinds of projects to undertake in the future and experiments on this channel by the grace of YouTube, if they allow us to do what we would like to do. I don't need a new motorbike, Alphabet Cat. Thank you for offering, but I've got a sturdy Honda CBF 600, which is pretty bulletproof, like most good Honda engines are. It's a bit of a rust bucket in places, but it still works. And, I do change the brakes occasionally so that it can stop in theory if I need it to. But yes, that's how I travel. I don't have a car. I don't take the train anywhere because it's also expensive. And it's nice to, as I say, pop down to see people from time to time in the big city, and then retreat back to the countryside where I live, or I kind of live in a sort of a liminal zone myself between towns and countryside. But yes, I have to have a ready supply of Little Kong Strong, which is the energy drink I'm drinking today, which is the sugar-free version, by the way. That's because I'm too fat to drink too much more sugary stuff. Just do this kind of stuff on an ongoing basis, really, because I'm not really much use for anything else.
Other energy drinks are available.
Other energy drinks are available. They're all too expensive and they're not very nice. The little one is the closest one to Red Bull that is out there, strangely enough. And it's the sugar-free version that actually tastes better than the sugary one.
They used to be like 13p at one point.
Everything used to be cheaper. I mean, isn't it just outrageous?
Shit now. We should rename the show. Isn't everything crap? That's what we should. Yeah.
Everything's rubbish. But it's not all rubbish out there. It's actually it's pleasant weather today. I'm sitting here at home. It's a very comfortable 21 degrees. It's bright and sunny. Gentle breeze outside, as I say. No cloud in the sky, and it's going to be 25 tomorrow, 26, 24 the rest of the week before it starts to go a bit grim at the end of July. I'm seeing
the lack of rain still concerns me, Simon.
Yes. So you're worried about the crops?
Yes, I'm worried about the crops. Sorry, eating on air. Sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't have any lunch. Sorry.
What are you taking in? Are you having
It's some salami on some rye bread.
Very nice.
With a bit of garlic mayonnaise.
Is it an artisanal salami from a delicatessen?
No,
or from
no. It's co-op owned German salami.
Well, that's fine. We believe in the proletarian brands, and we support people who are shopping at budget supermarkets. Just another shout out for Little there. If you would like to give me a really great promotional deal, I will be more than happy. I am still, as I say, remembering Academic Agent's all-time Shergar deal with Ainsley Harriott there. It's some of us deserve to wet our beak a little bit, have a little bit of the corporate pie in order to provide you with hours and hours of entertainment like this.
Yes, and as this gentleman has pointed out, if anyone would like to sponsor the show, you can contact me on PanamaHat47@protonmail.com.
There we go.
We will be happy to. We'll shill anything. So
we used to get bottles of stuff. I mean, my friend Hector Drummond and I, who's on Twitter, we used to do a show called The Guff Stream, and occasionally we'd have some very good people who would send us bottles of stuff. Lord Biddable of Wonk, if anybody knows him on Twitter, he was very kind. He would send like whiskey or whatever. We had bottles of gin, all sorts of things. So you can send stuff to us if you really want.
It's good to know you can still count on the peerage.
And we can do live tastings of things, couldn't we, to Panama? If people sent us really nice things. I mean, I said to you, I had Courvoisier, for the first time recently, and it was absolutely delicious. It's probably quite expensive, but I mean, I'm sure someone out there can afford a bottle or two of Courvoisier for us, so that we can.
Yes, or cigars. I'm happy to
well,
smoke cigars.
now you're talking. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's all available, and yes, we will. As I say, we'll shill anything anyone.
We want to share. We want to share the finer things in life with you by putting them in our mouths and telling you how yummy they are, and that's how we share. Yeah. So, where are we at? So we are now at 5:15 on Sunday, 19th of July, and
Rapidly
you're
approaching
Studio Dimanche on Panama FM, and we are about to have a look at the John Betjeman Poet in London documentary from BBC's Monitor, which is what year was that? Was it done? Was it 1961 or something? I'm just going to
was it that early?
I think it was quite early. It's black and white. It's 59 indeed. 1959. It was Ken Russell's first film for the BBC.
Yeah.
And Ken Russell, very interesting filmmaker. If anybody's ever looked at some of his early films for the Beeb, very interesting creative mind there. Yeah, he ended on a bit of a seedy note, Ken, with some of his stuff, but his stuff in the 60s. The film he made about Rossetti with Oliver Reed was good fun. I quite like that.
Wonderfully exuberant sort of style. I think what Kermode said about him was right, which is that he was the anti-kitchen sink, if you like. He proved there was another side to British cinema. He didn't have to just be kind of, dark realism.
Exactly. You had that kind of surreal, ebullient, exotic. Have you ever seen the Jonathan Miller Alice in Wonderland from that time?
Yes, I have. It's a favorite of mine, actually.
Really interesting. I mean, I've seen it once, and I didn't take to it. But with me, the thing is, I often don't take to things. I often even hate things, and then return to them again years later, and I love them. So with me, that hating something is not really a sign of anything at all, because I will often go back and reappraise, and then I'll think, this is brilliant. Why didn't I see what was in it the first time? And I struggled a bit with the Alice in Wonderland, because it felt like there were some longers in it, around the Mad Hatter's Tea Party where it dragged.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, it does come from that time where maybe they didn't have much of a budget, but they certainly put it up in the frame, as you say. They whacked it up on the screen. You saw the money.
I should say, before I say anything about Alice in Wonderland, I am a Lewis Carroll obsessive, have been since I was a very young child.
Obsessive,
not just obsessive. I really mean that. I mean, I have, you sometimes see people and they've got like chess, but like huge bound chess volumes like on their shelf.
Yeah,
I've got that, but for Lewis Carroll, like I've got sort of 1,000-page compendiums that go into every bit, like sort of annotations to James Joyce type stuff. I mean, I'm really, really obsessed with that.
Now.
His style of writing, and particularly because this form of surrealism that he practiced, basically.
Yeah, but we all know when you bring up Lewis Carroll, there's always going to be someone in the chat who says, come on, he was a bit of a pedo or something like that. Now, is that going to happen?
Well, I've had a video in the works for quite a while now, sort of trying to approach Lewis Carroll. I'm not really sure where to start, because it's kind of like approaching. When I did the Warhol streams, it was like a sort of a PhD level sort of multi-stream. It would have to be something like that. It would be a huge amount of work. But the aspect of his alleged paedophilia, I'm firmly on the side that I simply don't think there's any reasonable evidence to support that. I don't think it's a fair thing to accuse him of with the evidence we have. You basically may as well say pick any figure and go, well, pedophile probably. So based on what I mean, to briefly run through this controversy, it's largely because he was a photographer, a very, very skilled amateur photographer, and he was friendly with the Liddell family, whom Alice Liddell is why the Alice in the Alice books is named that, and there are some photographs which exist of an artistically posed young Alice, done by these were requested by the family. He didn't do these off his own bat. He was specifically brought in and asked to take these pictures. And there is one photograph of her in which she is nude. Not you should say not. It's not like a sexual. It's not a what you call child pornography. It's not photos like that.
It's an artistic nude, you would say.
It's an artistic nude, and it's
Yeah.
you have to remember that at the time, the Victorians had an obsession with children.
Mm.
And it was very, very common for middle-class families to have artistically posed pictures of their children, often naked, simply for the reason that it was not conceivable to them that this would be in any way construed sexually.
As parents of my generation did, you always had, pictures that, slightly embarrassing pictures of yourself as nude as a kid. And, because, taking pictures of the kids in the bath or something like that, it's got an innocent air about it. And it's a fun thing for parents. And it's like,
yeah,
it's obviously not sexualized. But for the Victorians as well, there's always got to be remember you've got to remember the certain jeopardy about the survival of children in the Victorian period. People having more children, being accustomed to the fact that some of them would die, even to the extent, obviously you've got Victorian death photography that's in this. I mean, they kind of, I suppose, maybe
totally different sensibility. They saw things as really tasteful and special that we would see as just grotesque and ghoulish. I mean, you're talking about a totally different time, and also that's really all they have to go on, this idea that he was a repressed paedophile. I mean, Will Self, actually, a huge disagreement I would have with him is he's convinced that Lewis Carroll was like, he's no doubt in his mind the guy was just a repressed pedo, and it's not. I don't think. I just don't think there's anything to support that. He was, and also because I think he was sort of a quiet single man, because he was held holy orders, he was celibate.
He was obviously wrong.
He was obviously wrong, and also because he was sort of like an uncle to those girls and very friendly with them. I think the problem is he fits that mold of single guy was friends with these girls, and then at some point there was a rupture where he no longer was friends with the Liddell family, and people then assume that he must have done something inappropriate. People of course forgetting that the Alice Liddell of who he knew and based Alice off lived well into her adulthood and never ever said anything but kind words about her time with Lewis Carroll. So again, it's kind of a circumstantial. If you want to just be purely circumstantial and say, well, it looks a bit dodgy to me, might have been a pedo, then fine. But that's all you've got. It's not like he was a secret monster who was doing all this stuff. There simply isn't the evidence to support it, right? I don't think it's a reasonable claim. So as you say, so I have no truck for that personally. But anyway, to get back to the point at hand, which I can't remember now. Oh yes, the Ken Russell Alice in Wonderland adaptation. I've always viewed that as a horror film. Actually, I think it's deliberately a surrealist horror film. And I think it's interesting because you can very easily view the Wonderland story that way. In that there is a darkness to it, in the way that there's a darkness to Edward Lear and the kind of nonsense poems. There is this a sinister undercurrent to it all. To me, that's what makes it so fascinating. Is that and the reason that there's been millions of interpretations about what it's about and what it means, and one of the reasons it's so endurable, just outside of being, obviously on one level, just a sort of vaguely silly, delightful children's story, is that it does. It's like what's the word for something you look into and everyone sees something different. It supports infinite interpretation and filters. And if you want to read it as this really quite grim horror story, then it can be read that way. It is quite dark.
I think there's an element as well that the kind of, I suppose, the level of organization and purposiveness of Victorian society, at least as we think of it now in retrospect, has a sort of a sense of many societies. They kind of need moments where enchantment peeps through again in some way. We're sort of talking about a sort of society of a discipline and a rigor that's aimed towards, let's say, the imperial project, where like today, in the way that I was talking to Proper Horror Show about this. We were thinking of looking at office-based horror The way in which the kind of the formalities and structures and the sort of compliance matrix of things like the nature of work, begin to be these oppressive forces in the absence of any kind of feudal oppressions or totalitarian oppressions. We have this configuration of the normal life as this kind of enslavement at work, essentially, and then exhaustion outside of work. And it lends itself to this atmosphere of people wanting to re-enchant the world in some way, to find some sort of sense of a magic, even a dark magic, in the sort of interstices, in the sort of gaps between the existence that we talked about before, of waking up in the dark and going home in the dark, and your life almost becoming subterranean and feeling somewhat oppressive, and maybe something about the sort of the somewhat more rigorous nature of Victorian society lends itself to that need to escape in that way, that has a kind of dark surrealism about it, that has a quality both of sort of constraint and trying to escape that constraint. And there's something in that, you talking about the photographing of children in the context of Carol, this thing of the slightly fey, the slightly trying to get into the fairy realm. Later on you have with sort of spiritualists and mediums and people, the Cottington fairies later on in the early 20th century. It's the X-Files in a way. It's, I want to believe in something else. I want to have some sense of this mystique around, in the gaps between my tightly constrained life. In a way, it's kind of a sort of symptom like, you have people working in offices, and most of us, in these lives governed by appraisals and audits, and the sort of constricting feeling of modern workplaces, and things like this current strain of horror, this backrooms idea, where you begin to reinvent these places absent of all of the pressures that they present you with, and creatures from the id are kind of bubbling up inside them instead. And maybe there's something about that in the relation of Carol. There's always a fascination with the idea of the juxtaposition of innocence and evil around children. You see it obviously in 20th century horror films, Damien, The Omens and stuff like that, and Poltergeist and all the kinds of ways in which children represent something to us about, we talked about, living as children, having a life of adventure and openness and imagination, and at the same time, as adults, being, terribly removed from any sense of that being a possibility. And so, something like Carol is peculiarly English in that way. That carries that. I don't want to use words like repression. You get too sort of wrapped up in a kind of Freudian idea that everybody in the Victorian era was kind of a sort of a corseted monster in some way. But there is a sense.
This is what Will Self says. This is his whole idea, right? That it's this idea of he was like this repressed because he was a celibate man and was a bit shy around women. He was this monstrous paedophile.
Yeah. It's kind of boring that everything gets reduced to that, is what I'm saying. It's nobody's running kind of cover for child abuse, but it's a sort of reflex now because we're also amped up about it.
Well, this is it, and to not to be too get into sort of horrible stuff here, but as Bruce Robinson points out in his book "They All Love Jack," which is a great read, by the way, if anyone wants to get a copy of that. Bruce Robinson, who made Withnail and I. The thing is, if Lewis Carroll was a paedophile, he wouldn't have had to have chased after the Alice sisters. He could have gone to the East End and bought a child for about £5.
Well, quite. Yeah.
This is it. You see, is that the Victorian age wasn't repressed; it was hypocritical. That's what people get wrong. Is that he could have gone to one of these one of the many extant brothels that quite literally sold children.
I mean, that is a fascinating.
For the use of men.
Fascinating book in that that context, the Bruce Robinson, They All Love Jack. Aside from his thesis about Jack the Ripper as a possible Freemason, the introduction to the book and the sort of the picture of London, very Sweeney Todd-esque kind of steaming, smoking, dangerous, gurgling, subterranean, demi-monde London is brilliant, and the sheer, as you say, the abutting brutality
Yeah,
of
you have to remember it was real. It's
yeah.
not just a leftist fantasy about Victorian London. It was what we think it was and what they think it was all together. Right.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
It's a shame we didn't get through London, because Patrick Keeler quotes a Russian, Alexander Herzen, who came to London, and he wrote a very moving passage about the contrasts of London that you had. He said, where people are kind of starving to death outside of hotels on the Strand, where you can't eat for less than £2. £2 being a very significant amount of money. I mean, there's a way in which you can lean too much into the Scruton's culture of repudiation. Wasn't everything in Britain bad? But in a sense, there was a reality, as you're saying, about the sort of the shock of laissez-faire as it existed, and what that then entailed in terms of social license that obviously the Victorians had marvelous PR for, and for which we now regard the age as one of a success of buttoned up capitalism. But there are the kind of, again, the dark interstices where we do have stories that are pretty hard to reconcile, and when we have to kind of take stock of in some way and say, well, there's an element about when you unleash and free certain things like commercial forces in a society, and you degrade the moral landscape in such a way, is then commerce all it's cracked up to be? Does it not have a sense of some social restraint here that we must find?
Yes, exactly, Simon. And I think it just comes with having a realistic view of the past, or as realistic as we can glean from what the resources we have. We must keep these things in our mind, and perhaps it would be interesting actually if we did a stream on the book. They All Love Jack. We both read it.
Yeah.
If we basically just pick some excerpts and discuss them and read them, perhaps we could do that next week or the week after.
I think so, because I mean the long case that he makes is kind of one bit of the book, but to me it's the great bits are the sort of scene setting and the invective.
Yeah, if we avoid the through line about the Masonic thing and the Ripper killings, if we just avoid that and just look at his scene setting, if you like.
Yeah, I think that's very worthy. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also just one more point. I mean, bear in mind, this is not to knock either artist, because I believe in the separation of the art and the artist, and two, I think that it's this isn't just trying to score a point, but just to put this in context. I've never seen articles in the Telegraph discussing whether or not Oscar, talking about the paedophilia of Oscar Wilde, which was proven in court, lest we forget. Right, he was using underage boys in various male brothels. For some reason, it's just Lewis. I think it's because Lewis Carroll has the air of we might be uncovering something.
Yes.
This idea of what, because it's so grossly unfair, because you couldn't do it if it was a living person.
Yeah, I didn't know the case with Wilde was involved.
Well, I mean, there's probably a different technical term in paedophilia in that it was teenage boys rather than
Yeah.
But still, it's obviously still grossly immoral. And and of course, but because with him it was proven in court. So that was the it was charged of gross indecency, and he was testified against by various telegraph boys and street runners he'd paid for their services. So it just seems I'm not saying again to knock other artists, but it just seems unfair to me that Lewis Carroll is held to this mysterious thing of but he might have been a paedophile. But sorry, but I mean, if we discover some heretofore lost diary entry where it revealed he actually was this child crazed freak, then sure, okay, fine. But it's the speculation I find unfair. I think it's tabloid fodder. It's very hackneyed stuff. I don't think it's warranted. But yeah, I say because talking about Lewis Carroll, I could fill many hours on that. So we'll do that another time. But yeah, that Ken Russell film is. We should definitely see if we can review that. I doubt we'd be able to do it live because the copyright would probably kill us. But
possibly it's BBC, isn't it? But I mean, at least revisiting it, I think, is always a good thing, and that's where I often find new things when I revisit them for streams. Is that's part of the interest, really, is looking at stuff I might instinctively not like because I am narrow-minded, and then going back and going, oh gosh, there's so much in it. Yeah.
I'd just also like to point out the cast of that film is incredible. I mean, even the
Yeah.
minor roles. We've got, I mean, you got Wilfred Bramble, Alan Bennett, Sir Michael Redgrave, Leo
Yeah.
McKern, Peter Cook,
Yeah.
Michael Gough, Wilfred Lawson, Peter Sellers, John Gielgud, Malcolm Muggeridge, Eric Idle. I mean,
come
right, there's
on.
no one who wasn't in it. I mean, it's I
Yeah.
haven't seen it in years actually. I should give it a rewatch.
Yeah. I mean, even though Jonathan Miller was terrible in his debate with Enoch Powell and very slippery and dishonest, he did make some good fun films, including that one and Whistle and I'll Come to You, obviously, which is a favorite of mine, the M.R. James story.
I'm sorry to have to inform you, Simon, but it appears your slight Freudian slip earlier has gone down quite well in the chat. I'm afraid there may be records.
They all want me to say the word. I'm not going to say it. We're not going to go. We're not going to be bevulgarized. In a way.
Love Simon.
Yeah. Dear, oh dear,
no,
oh dear.
Yeah, we can only say that word in context. So.
Yes.
So see, look, that's got they don't want to discuss Lewis Carroll and Oscar Wilde and psychogeography. It's just he said the M.
Oh, crumbs!
It's like the Groundlings, isn't it? It's like the Groundlings.
And this is only going to get worse as I get older and go more gaga.
When Shakespeare used to put cock jokes in, during the Porter's speech, and laughing at that.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
And I'm exactly the last person who would go there on the stream. I don't go.
Come on now, stop messing about. Stop messing about. Stop messing about. Come on, right.
So our studio Radio Giscard music bed has now run out, which seems an opportune moment then maybe to seamlessly segue.
Mr. Giscard is gesturing at me. I think he's I think they're wrapping up. Okay, yeah, the orchestra's packing up, they're leaving.
That's right. They're off for
we'll see you next week, chaps. Yeah, it's been good. Thank you. No, you're not going to get paid. No. No, we'll deal with it another time. All right, just get out. All right. Thank you, Radio Giscard.
We're just ushering out the servants there.
Yeah, they're just squabbling by the door now.
So now we're returning to a sedate, calm parlor atmosphere in which we are unsheathing our cigars from their whatever you put cigars in. I don't know.
I've got a few cigars here though. I might.
Do you have a Tupperdoor, or do you have a humidor?
I do have a proper humidor, but I never use it because I tend to just buy them and smoke them rather than keep them for ages.
Which sounds
I'm not like AA.
Yeah.
AA buys cigars by the thousand and sells them. For
he bought expensive humidors, didn't he? And then he just rejected them in favor of Tupperdoors.
Yeah, because to be fair, it's less faff. You just stick them in a Tupperware box with a humid pack. It's a bit easier that way. But, yeah. But I was going to save it for Cigar Street. But no, he's got an underground cave full of salt and rare cheese, and he puts cigars in there to make sure that they're right. He's quite the auteur when it comes to.
He sits there like the Smaug of Surrey atop a hoard of riches underneath the lodge, doesn't he?
Right. Simon, I've just received a missive, right? Someone at Alphabet Cat says, I was just thinking that Hat and Simon should review Nolan's The Odyssey and give us a lowdown on that and its implications. Alphabet Cat, I don't know what channel you think you're watching. Okay.
I'm sorry.
This isn't Slop Hour. This isn't EFAP with Mauler. This isn't Lotus Eaters. We don't do slop reviews of woke movies that have come out. This isn't.
Let's do a 10-hour review of it.
No. We're not. That to us, that film doesn't exist. Doesn't even exist.
Exactly.
Right. I nearly said. It's ignored. Right.
Exactly.
Ignored is the word I was.
Exactly.
Alphabet Cat, you don't need us to give it 0 stars because it does it exists beyond our purview, right?
Yeah.
I did actually, though, to be fair, Simon, on the point of the Odyssey, I did watch Oh Brother, Where Art Thou for the first time the other day because it was recommended to me. I quite enjoyed that.
I saw that recently.
I quite liked it. Funny bit of sort of knockabout Coen Brothers stuff.
Yeah, and very a friend actually in the southern US recommended it to me. He DM'd me and said, "You should watch this. I love this film," and it's got a sweetness about it and a charm of the old South, but not in the old South that you often see. It's not like Gone with the Wind old South. It's it's just real places, real small towns, and a certain calm. And like we said about Mike Leave's Topsy Turvy, this way of, you have this sort of almost hyperbolic politeness in there, but in a historical setting where it doesn't seem, like it's just for the sake of being quaint, or that it's hiding some sort of grittiness. It feels like a real world in a way. It's a caper, and it's charming, but it sort of feels like these are basically nice people. You could kind of live in that world.
Well, yeah, and of course we should. It's the reason I brought it up is because it's partly based on the story of the Odyssey. It's like a sort of it's not really a retelling. It's but that's the basic narrative it uses. And in the credits it says inspired by Homer's Odyssey. But the South as it's portrayed in that puts me in mind of the way that interwar Britain is portrayed in Poirot or Jeeves and Wooster, where it's a kind of world that was but never was. If you see what I mean, it's like a. It's a fantasy world, but that gets to the essence of the time it's set in. Really, I enjoyed it very much. Right then, without further ado, we shall begin our viewing. This is probably a one-off, we should say. I think the others, the rest of our Sunday studio sessions are going to be just music and talk. I think, but we will for this one. We will. There we go. Off already, right? Anything to say before we begin, Simon?
Not
anything further?
Not at all. I mean, one thing, of course, that we have is, one part of me wants to just let it flow and we just enjoy it as it is, but it feels like there are frames in this where you want to stop it and say, let's just appreciate that for a moment.
Well, what we'll do then, we'll just talk, and if we want to pause, say pause, and we can go over. But otherwise, I'll just assume we can let it play.
But do go and watch this in your own time. If we are good, if we do break it up too much, and it becomes a bit of a chore. Like with all the things that we watch, you should watch them in your own time as well. We don't like setting homework, but watch them with the flow and the rhythm and the pace that was intended, and the immersion that you get from them. And again, there's something like this. Watch it on a big screen. It's worth doing for that. TV in these days tried to attain something more than just the size of a phone screen. It was trying to take you into a world, and for us, a world on the sort of cusp of a transition, a loss and a gain.
I think the audience needs to understand that fundamentally, Simon and I are Reithians in that we believe that the audience must be educated. The audience must be sat down and made to engage with the culture that it does not otherwise appreciate. So no slop, Alphabet Cat. You're gonna get culture on this channel. Okay, there's other places to get slop. We don't need us to do it as well.
It's like drinking whiskey. You have to be taught how to drink whiskey, because
exactly
if you just put it in your mouth, oh, it burns, it's unpleasant. That's a childlike reaction. You have to train. You may even have to desensitize yourself a little bit. But it's like cigars. You eventually pick up flavors, and you appreciate something from a perspective of having worked for it as well.
That's right. And the Panama Hat channel it's not for the feckless, No. This is a quality place.
No, the motto we have in Latin is no scum, I think, isn't it?
That's right. Yes. No scum. Hat rules okay. There you go. There's Latin for you. Right. I'm going to turn the sound down a little bit. If people need me to turn it up, then do let me know in the chat. So here's Sir John Betjeman. Even the intros aren't like they used to be, Simon.
No. There's no kind of effortfulness about it, or expositional
frames. Now coming up on T4.
London and Cornwall. Here in the traffic roar of the city of London, I've written.
Look at that shot. I mean, that's a magnificent shot.
Because this
we should just for context as well, people who don't know. At this time in 1959, as there would be for quite a bit longer, there was just bomb damage. I mean, huge amounts of because you have to remember that the Blitz was a severe bombing set of bombing raids. I mean, it was a lot of London was just flattened outright. So, and it took decades for a lot of this stuff to go away. I mean, as late as the early 80s, you could still walk past some places that were just, remains of where they'd been
Yeah.
bombing.
And very much, I mean, this is a Selfian point as well when I put out his program about going down the sewer tunnels. But you've got to remember, London, in a sense, London is a 3D city. You see this, this building that's been destroyed here, and the way the walls fall away, because you're not just destroying a building on the surface in London, the voltages underneath as well, the cellars and basements of all kinds of, I mean, the thing about England is because we sort of high density and low footprint, buildings often have more space in them than at first appears, especially in London, where you're building vertically, even in the age of Victorian terraces, 2 maybe 3 stories, and cellars as well, so you can I guess maximize the efficiency of what you have. But lots of these commercial buildings and institutional buildings will have some depth to them as well. So as you can see there, the mere craters maybe not doesn't describe it, because you will have voltages going down into the foundations of the city from the medieval period, maybe even the Roman period in places as well, where things have been built and overbuilt in order to incorporate and not necessarily destroy what has gone previously, to encapsulate it, but then to build atop of it as well. And the city itself a layered succession, like a cemetery in many ways.
Indeed.
Art is associated with my childhood. I can remember where we are now was the Manchester Hotel, and where this bracken and rosemary grows. Once down in the passages, which are tiled, you can still see the tiles. Once people hurried along with trays of tea, and now all that remains is this and the bombed ruins there of Aldersgate Street Station. Long after the amalgamation of all the independent railways, Aldersgate Street Station in the City of London remained a memorial of unwilling cooperation. On one side of the station, to this day, steam trains come in early in the morning from the suburbs and go out in the afternoon to the suburbs. And on the other side, electric trains are constantly and efficiently whirring to Hammersmith and round on the inner circle. And that huge station had, up at the top as you went out, a refreshment room, which I can remember before the war. It had plate glass windows, and on the plate glass windows, in China letters, were the words, "Afternoon tea's a speciality." Very nice place to have tea. And then, last year, or maybe the year before, they took the enormous cast iron roof off the station, and that took away a lot of its personality and a lot of the feeling of the old city people who used to use it when the people wore silk hats and travelled in a very respectable manner in non-smoking carriages.
Pause for a second. Good framing there, actually. Just to hark back a few seconds ago, you saw the sort of long shot looking down the line on the platform, and that's certainly, there's some fabric there that survives. You have the arches either side of the platform. They are sort of more or less still there. Lots of the other infrastructure is gone. This is now where you have Barbican Station, opposite the Barbican itself, and with the towers of the Barbican looming over it at the present time. So you can see, as I say, some of the fabric that he's alluding to here. But obviously a lot of it, like he says, the roof has been taken off and other buildings have just been outright taken away. There is something of this left. And yet, of course, in the sort of bustle of living in a city like London, and the fact that it's on a transport system, people will be in among it every day without really getting much of the echo of these ghosts anymore.
Yes. And also to your point earlier about the hit, that so much of London is hidden. In that, in this, I mean, to an extent, all cities that are that old have this sort of feature, but London in particular, the amount of times they'll be building something and they'll just stumble upon half a mile of cellaring that they didn't know was there. Or just bits that go off into other buildings that they didn't, hidden rooms and forgotten, bits of city. It's quite remarkable.
As Oswulf has said in the chat, that the trend to build down has increased in London. I mean, there is a kind of hyper territorialization going on now, where you get these, multi-million pound houses where, rock stars live, and they want to build these massive basements and sub-basements in order to create recreational facility under their properties, and really kind of ultramax the amount of space they have in what is a constricted streetscape. But there's also layers of ancient infrastructure as well that as Hat says, we simply don't see. And again, going back to Will Selfridge, he's got an interesting conversation online with Robert Elms, the BBC DJ, called Listed Londoners, and he relates a lot about these kind of hidden places, hidden churches that are really interesting that you go into, that are just the stuff he talks about. And he says there's a great view. You go up to near Dulwich College, where Nigel Farage went to school, up near Forest Hill,
I like
and then
slightly dark tone where Nigel Farage went to school.
Yeah, I know. I'm sort of using him as
gothic.
There's a sort of up in Sydenham. There's a golf course, that kind of, and he says, you can't actually get in publicly. You sort of have to, not break in exactly, but you have to kind of squirrel your way into it. And you can go up onto this golf course and you get the best view of London, better than Parliament Hill, which has a great vista of London, as does Primrose Hill. But this place, it's one of those places you will not know unless, you're a member of the golf club, which of course, again, is quite an exclusive deal usually in places like London. These are not something that most of us will ever see. And yet there are views there, and aspects to the city and landscapes that are worth seeing. And there's so much of that in London that you have, that the hidden London is a huge part of it. You can live in it in a quotidian way, and you just see your house and you see the shops, but there is sort of such a wealth there that it is a really interesting city to explore at the subterranean level, as well as the elevated.
Holiday on the death of Aldersgate Street Station. Snow falls in the buffet of Aldersgate Station. Soot hangs in the tunnel in clouds of steam. City of London, before the next desecration, let your steepled forest of churches be my theme. Sunday silence, with every street a dead street, alley and courtyard empty, and cobbled mews, till Tingle Tang, the bell of St. Mildred's Bread Street, summoned the sermon taster to high box pews, and neighbouring towers and spirelets joined the ringing with answering echoes from heavy commercial walls, till all were drowned as the sailing clouds went singing on the roaring flood of a 12-voiced peal from Paul's. Then would the years fall off, and Thames run slowly. Out into marshy meadowland flowed the fleet, and the walled-in city of London, smelly and holy, had a tinkling mess house in every cavernous street. The bells rang down, and St. Michael Paternoster would take me into its darkness from College Hill, or Christchurch Newgate Street with St. Leonard Foster would be late for matins and ringing insistent still. Last of the east-walled sculpture, a cherub gazes on broken arches, Rose Bay, Bracken and Dock, where once I heard the roll of the prayer book phrases and the sumptuous tick of the old West Gallery clock. Snow falls in the buffet of Aldersgate Station. Toiling and doomed from Moorgate Street puffs the train. For us of the steam and the gaslight, the lost generation, the new white cliffs of the city are built in vain.
Can't really break a sequence like that, can you? So,
No. I mean, also because he's just such a wonderful poet.
yeah.
What people don't realize who build these big blocks in the city, these huge new white cliffs, is what an awful time the people who have to work in them have in getting to them. The struggle, for instance, that business girls, young business girls, fresh from home, have to go through in order to reach these cliffs. I'm always touched by the sight of people struggling to get to these places, and they live very often in furnished rooms, in large houses, originally built for large families, and now turned into flats. You can
Nothing
see
changes,
them all over London,
I
particularly
wonder what Betcham would have thought of
in
the HMO.
inner
Wow.
steam railway sort of suburb. And this poem I wrote about business girls in Camden Town. From the geyser ventilators, autumn winds are blowing down on 1,000 business women having baths in Camden Town. Waste pipes chuckle into runnels, steams escaping here and there. Morning trains through Camden Cutting shake the crescent and the square. Early nip of changeful autumn, dahlias glimpsed through garden doors. At the back, precarious bathrooms jutting out from upper floors. And behind their frail partitions, business women lie and soak, seeing through the draughty skylight flying clouds and railway smoke. Rest you there, poor unbeloved ones, lap your loneliness in heat. All too soon, the tiny breakfast, trolley bus and windy street.
Pause. Just a footnote. I can't obviously resist, but some people sharp-eyed may recognize some of this footage that Adam Curtis uses in the opening shots of the Mayfair set of London at the age of empire. And another 10 years, you're talking about this is the kind of streetscape that people like Bruce Robinson are living in Camden, in these somewhat dilapidated looking places, which are obviously worth a bomb now, but at that time were more or less run down and in need of gentrification, I suppose people would think now. But you could, I suppose, to some extent, get in and live in London in that way. You might not necessarily be living in the most salubrious flats, not like they are now, where they've had a lot of investment put into them. But I think what you're seeing here, it's probably not too distant to imagine that the insides reflect the outsides quite a bit at this period as well. That there was still a level of grottiness going on.
Yeah, I mean, people should remember. I mean, until relatively recently, the whole city was very smoggy, and because there were so many factories and steam trains and steam vents, which we don't really have anymore. I know that New York still uses steam vents. We don't.
Yeah.
But everything was kind of covered in dirt, really, soot and residue, and obviously it was somewhat unpleasant. It did feel dirty. I know people that remember how it was, and they said, yeah, one of the reasons everyone was wearing hats all the time is because your hair would get full of stuff if you didn't keep a hat on. And obviously the buildings were black, St. Paul's and the Houses of Parliament and everything was black. But it was also kind of part of the character of the city. I mean, the smog and the pea soup, as it was called, was very much part of it. And also, I just wanted to say that people, more well-read members of the audience will recognize the allusions there to T.S. Eliot's Wasteland, when Betjeman talks about young women in tiny furnished rooms with baths and rubbish food. That's obviously an allusion to Eliot's woman who lives in a one-room flat with a divan bed and has to make assignations with what he calls a Bradford millionaire. Little changes, I think. But
the thing you're talking about there, even when I moved back to London or to London in the mid-90s, it was still pretty. There was always the phenomenon that was remarkable to me and lots of my friends when we came to London is you would, go to work in London, spend a day in London, you come home, and in the evening you took your shirt off and there was a scum line of black dirt around your neck, where just the grit and grime and general pollution of London was caught in the air, landed in your sweat, and then just sort of settled around.
Does,
I mean,
it does still happen if you
yeah,
spend long enough out. You do still get. I
yeah,
mean, I've since living in London only a few months, I can't keep my fingernails clean
no,
at all.
no,
Always fingernails are always filthy.
yeah.
Even when you don't touch anything, somehow it just happens.
It just transmits. Yeah, it is a strange thing about the city, but it also lends a sort of air of living there that people aren't too well. I mean, there's levels of living there, but you're not always too precious about things like that because everybody knows there's always that little element of scunginess around that you just kind
of it.
You just make peace with.
You can't have a beating city without the the byproduct. It's part of the experience. I don't want London to be clean. one of my biggest problems is that nowadays it feels too plastic and fake and clean.
Yeah.
I would prefer the dirty, stinking London of yore, but nevertheless.
Well, it's like because each day then has a story, doesn't it? You arrive home, you slough everything off, but you feel kind of like it's an achievement. I mean, like he's saying here about, the thing of the trial of getting to work. This is a time where maybe there are areas where there is a lot more building site stuff going on, and access is maybe not as refined as I suppose as it comes to be. But there is a thing of London in itself, living there, that it can feel like a battle. Getting around the place, even on foot, on the tubes, on the buses, amidst the crowds and the surge and the kind of chaos or the unexpected traffic jam or some other incident, that you kind of do feel you have to earn your bread. Just maneuvering around the city each day. It's sort of, it's not unexpectedly exhausting. It's not like perhaps just cruising in, driving in, parking, and sashaying up elevators and escalators. You sort of have to fight your way through London in very many cases.
Yeah. Again, I think part of the part of what one goes there for, really.
Unfortunately, I can't keep sex out of my poems. It would be hypocritical for me to do so. Everywhere you go in London in public transport, you can't get away from the beauty of the girls. The sort of girl I like to see smiles down from her great height at me. She stands in strong athletic pose and wrinkles her retroussé nose. Is it distaste that makes her frown, so furious and freckled down on an unhealthy worm like me? Or am I what she likes to see? I do not know, though much I care. I think annoy mean, would I were, forgive me shade of Rupert Brooke, an object fit to claim her look. Oh, would I were her racket, pressed with hard excitement to her breast, and swished into the sunlit air, arm high above her tousled hair, and banged against the bounding ball. Oh, plung, my tautum strings would call. Oh, plung, my darling, break my strings. For you I will do brilliant things. And when the match is over, I would flop beside you, hear you sigh, and then, with what supreme caress, you tuck me up into my press. Fair tigress of the tennis courts, so short in sleeve and strong in shorts, little alas to you I mean, for I am bald and old and green.
Pause.
Classic Betjeman. Classic Betjeman type verse.
Sort of wistful, and yet, he's just a misogynistic old perv. He's just a middle-aged old perv, Panama. He's not allowed to think like that.
No, it's beautiful, isn't it? The yearning of a yearning. Not even just really older man, any man for beautiful, unattainable women.
Yeah. The sort of the sort of sadness of time passing, your awareness of yourself, And again, we can you imagine us being, this mode, if you like, being possible now, because everything would be about the male gaze, and a sense that this is somehow deeply wrong. This is objectification,
Yeah.
or this is not just a cycle of a man's life or anybody's life. This would be deeply problematic.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know if it would quite. I've never heard sort of woke denunciations of someone like Betjeman, to be honest. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it even really could trigger their sort of alarms in that way. It's too because really it's just an engagement with the
stuff of
prominence
mortality.
of the sexual feminine in the modern world. I mean,
Mm.
the use of the advertising. I mean,
Yeah.
Larkin wrote poems on this theme as well. About women on advertising and boards. I mean, it's part of it's just sort of part of life. I mean, they know that yearning is there in the male spirit. Just as much as the women yearn to look like the women in the adverts. So I mean, it's I'm sure you could have someone call him an old pervy fuddy-duddy, but I don't think it would. They'd only do that through bad faith. I mean, you couldn't really have an issue with this. I don't think.
You think not? Slight shades of Antonioni in Blow Up a few years later, with the shots of Betjeman peering into the tennis court. Similar framing to David Hemmings at the end of the film.
Sorry, Simon. I just my lighter ran out. I was just.
Please attend to these priorities. It is great urgency that we have the ability to make fire on this stream.
People probably heard me impotently flicking earlier.
Were you tutting loudly?
Yeah.
I wonder where this is. I haven't researched this film, so I don't know where this statue is.
I was going to say that statue of the girl holding the sword that the sequence started with. I
That's
wonder if
still
you
there.
knew what that was.
That is still there.
Okay.
I remember looking that up once. That is still there. It's just by the side of the road.
Roughly where it is?
I cannot remember. It feels like I don't know. I can't remember. I shouldn't really hazard it, but it will be locatable. I know it's still there, but it's kind of I don't know if it's been moved. In the way that Eros in Piccadilly Square was
moved.
Piccadilly Circus, I should say, was moved, and reorientated, away from the way it used to point down Shaftesbury Avenue. So I don't know, again, with some of these statues, they may or may not be there, or they've kind of been built around in some way, or reorientated in some way to be less prominent in the civic space. But I'm hoping and trusting these will still be there.
Finally, some of my verses are connected with childhood and memories of it, which we all share in common. My own childhood wasn't quite so successful as that of those beautiful tennis-playing girls we've just seen. And the other day, I went back to Hertfordshire. And my verse is always about places. And in Hertfordshire, I recollected painful times when I went wrong shooting with my father. And that brought forth these verses. I had forgotten Hertfordshire, the large unwelcome fields of roots, where with my knickerbockered sire I trudged in syndicated shoots, and that unlucky day when I fired by mistake into the ground under a Lionel Edwards sky and felt disapprobation round. The slow drive home by motor car, a heavy Rover landaulette through Welwyn Hatfield Potter's Bar, tweed and cigar smoke, and gloom and wet. And now I see these fields once more, clothed, thank the Lord, in summer green, pale corn waves rippling to a shore, the shadowy cliffs of elm between, colour-washed cottages, reed-thatched, and weather-boarded water-mills, flint churches, brick and plaster patched on mildly undistinguished hills. They still are there, but now the Shire suffers a devastating change. Its gentle landscape strung with wire, old places looking ill and strange. One can't be sure where London ends. New towns have filled the fields of root, where father and his business friends drove in the landaulette to shoot. Tall concrete standards line the lane. Brick boxes glitter in the sun. Far more would these have caused him pain than my mishandling of a gun.
Well, there we
All
are.
too brief. Yeah, beautiful camera work
Indeed.
though. I love the way they, allow it to linger as the poetry sort of washes over you.
Yeah, it's a good ending shot, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Walking to the future or back into the past? Who can tell?
Indeed, who can tell? Who can tell?
Yeah,
Very
we just thought
always
we'd share this
food for
jewel
thought,
with you.
Betches.
Mm.
Well, Simon, I'm aware that you
Mm.
have some time constraints today, owing to certain discomforts.
Oh, my back. It just kills my
Yeah,
back. Yeah. Well, we did 6 hours on Thursday, which was a
we did.
hefty portion, let's say. And I'm rationing this stream, but I mean, like, we could finish in another 15 minutes or so, make it a nice round 3.
Yeah. Well, I was
Um,
just going to say, maybe comments on Betjeman's career and some of his work, maybe.
Well, I'm interested in anything you want to relate, because I don't know enough about him. I see in charity shops sometimes his albums come up, like Banana Blush, and various of the other ones. Is it Banana Boat Blush or Banana Blush? But that's Words and Music by Betjeman. I've got several of them which I haven't listened to yet, which I ought to. But he's like
Yes.
Priestley. He's got a lovely, wistful, melancholy voice. But not one that is depressive. It's it's just that the persona in which we find him in this period is of the middle-aged man, who's inevitably going to have a touch of the elegiac about him, but sensitive and real. It's not fey. It's not. And it's not bleak. It's just time as it is experienced as it passes.
Yes. And I think, unfortunately, in the view of sort of modern poetry mandarins, Betjeman gets pigeonholed as a kind of fuddy-duddy, tweedy, sort of church and railway station writer. And I think this misses the incredible technical skill that he had, and also the simply that it's not representative of the breadth of his poetry. He was really one of the last great poets we've had in this country. And I think Philip Larkin made an excellent defense of a lot of Betjeman's work when he said, well, look, people may sort of turn up their noses at the subjects he chooses to write about, but really there is perhaps more that you can get out of the things he writes about than out of the sort of more direct modernist poetry that was being written, especially in the kind of post-Auden school. I mean, I think of it, so I can find the actual quote. Yeah, so Philip Larkin, 1962, he said, "How much more interesting and worth writing about Betjeman's subjects are than most other modern poets. I mean, whether so-and-so achieved some metaphysical inner unity is not really so interesting to us as the overbuilding of rural Middlesex." And I think he, there is certainly a lot to be said for him. I recommend people just buy, you can get a cheap Penguin collected edition of his work. It's very much worth looking at. There's also some really good appearances he made on chat shows. towards the end of his life in the 80s. He was on Parkinson a number of times. There's a quite a good appearance he did with of all people, Kenneth Williams and a younger Maggie Smith, which is quite good. And he reads various poems and is appreciated by Kenneth Williams, who was a kind of a quiet intellectual, we might say, and was very much, he read a great deal of poetry, both classic and modern, and was a great admirer of Betjeman. So yeah, I have really nothing really negative to say about the man.
No.
I think he was a great sort of presence, if you like, in Britain that I think we're much the worse off for now. His type isn't really there anymore.
Well,
the type of man that he was, that you don't really see
the
around.
The key thing he says is my poems are about place, and of course you're living, in the era of in cultural theory terms, the non-place, which is a specific idea of places like the train station, the airport, the shopping mall. These are these delocated places which just have retail or connective activity about them, and they don't have any sort of identity or sense of personal connection. You can be in them but not of them, and he is at that moment of reflecting maybe slightly apprehensively on the changes to place. They may be not less than maybe they're no less personal. Aldersgate Street Station, apparently he's there in Camden. Vauxhall Park, apparently, for part of what we saw here. And this is a thing that we're kind of in an age of being pressured not to think about ourselves being connected to a place in that way, are we? So that personalization, this is why the psychogeographic mode is interesting to me, because it is about, even if you are making your own constructive histories, about as Will Self talks about, it's you can have your GPS to determine your location, but what about your orientation? How you see yourself in a landscape relative to landmarks and to memories, and to places that are in themselves kind of citations of history in themselves, that you may not even give much regard or thought to, but which you pass by every day, and which then begin to sort of become layered with your own memories, your own, again, Proust's Madeleine, your own sense of biting into the thing, and it triggers an association with being in a place. That's the place where I thought that, or I had that memory, or where I had that phone call, or where something happened on that day. Where were you when such happened? And we're sort of given a sense in which, well, place like identity isn't important. It's transferable, it's fungible, it's mobile. And in a sense, it's the age of where tired nostrums, like, it's not it's not being in the place, it's the getting there that matters. It's the idea that experience is all about process, and not about a kind of relish of the arrival in itself and being there. Everything is kind of, you have to create a construction of a story that's based around transience in everything. Your identity, your home, everything kind of is falling away all the time. Everything is evaporating. It's evanescent, and then you kind of have to celebrate that transience. That's what you're being sort of compelled to, and he's giving us a wistful reflection on that. But we are in a sense feeling that pressure that for me, London was a case of you get ejected by London because it becomes financially often impossible to stay there. And you rather wish that wasn't the case, because you want to have a connection, even if you're not of London. I mean, I lived in London 18 years and sort of wanted, it's a terrible thing, but you wanted to become a Londoner by virtue of living there. And the way the city had become dominated by commerce meant that it spat you out at a certain point. It just became impossible. But you still have memories locked into that thing, and you still have a sense of your own orientation in that history and in that landscape, that it's being torn away from your grip often. That's my complaint.
Indeed. Well, Simon, thank you very much for being here, as usual, for the first in what I hope will be one of many Sunday sessions with our house band, who have now left the studio. And yes, would you give us one last good old shill? Make it a really good one.
Absolutely. Yes.
There you go.
Yes. You are on the Panama Hat channel, Panama Hat, and I'm Simon Roberts, co-presenter of these streams. And we invite you to support our work by going to Ko-Fi. That's ko-fi.com/Panama Hat, and making an absolutely ludicrous, bankrupting donation to us. So that
well worth it.
we can continue doing this and just having a great time. I mean, all the pleasure is ours, trust me. And we will repay that in spades by providing you with more glorious entertainment, cultural review, and savoring the dying of the light as it steals over us in this moment of the fading of civilization itself.
Yes, indeed. Simon, I mentioned on Deepest Law a few weeks ago that that fellow George Rockall Schmidt. I don't know if you
Go
remember,
on, remind my fading memory.
So he's a sort of quite esoteric. You'd really like him, actually. Sort of slightly esoteric video essayist, film reviewer. Good presentation style. Bit of sort of Stuart Lee postmodern. A bit of sort of bit of that kind of attitude, which again, probably would appeal. Certainly appeals to me. And I think so at the beginning of every one of his sort of review videos, he advertises a fake drink called Hip Tang. And it's a running joke for years now, and every video has got a slightly different little spot for Hip Tang. I like the idea that we have like we do some fake adverts for no real reason. We have sponsors that don't exist,
That's it.
Or maybe we can come up with some of those for the next one.
I think we can. I think we can do that. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's been a pleasure, and thank you to chat for enjoying and participating with us and feeding back things to us. Please do leave things in the comments as well. If there's something else you might like to see. We don't make any promises of a democratic nature, do we?
No.
But we savor these things that you give to us freely of your own good heart.
Indeed. So let us look forward to Tuesday, I believe it will be, when we will be back with some kind of topic for your delectation. We will decide in the meantime. And who knows, maybe even a few sponsorships. I'm going to go and watch Ken Russell's Alice in Wonderland now. And then, or maybe even, Simon, get this, The Footy. It is after all the World Cup final, and I've got friends that like football, so maybe I'll muck in and do some performative football watching.
Man of the people, Panama Hat. He does all the demotic stuff what the scrubbers do. And
how wanky can he get? That's what they're thinking.
I mean, I'm maybe tempted to rewatch the Alice in Wonderland. Actually, I sort of feel it's kind of those old 60s films, the Ken Russell films, the Jonathan Miller films, got a coziness about them that's quite relaxing.
Richard Phillips, 1066. Is the coffee thing the way to donate? Yes, you can donate through Ko-Fi with any amount you like, or you can use our now active channel memberships, which now they should be there. I don't know if I have to do something else to enable them, but there should be an option to become a member with 3 tiers. You can be, if I recall, cornflakes and fried bread tier. What was the middle one, Simon? I forgot.
Oh, it's the Jim Davidson racist
racist joke tier. You can do that too. And if you're feeling really flush, you can do Sir Peter Ustinov.
Yes.
I've just checked. If you go to the bottom of the chat tab, you can show your support by buying a membership. We do appreciate it. And yes, fried bread tier, reference to the birthday party there, if people don't remember that.
Yes.
Fried bread and cornflakes, a delicious British breakfast served by Mrs. Meg Bowles in and as Richard Phillips says, of course, £3 for coffee is very cheap in this day and age in London. So we're selling you a bargain, gentlemen.
Absolutely.
And remember to fondle, caress, dab the like button if you would like to boost us in the hideous algorithm even more. So
Yes.
with the time fast approaching, 6:30,
The dying
of a
moments
Sunday.
of Studio Dimanche. We bid you a fond farewell, and yes, invite you to join us as we go on.
So, sorry, no, you go on.
No, I ran out of steam.
I was gonna. Okay, well, that's okay. Have a perfectly melancholy day, and goodbye from us. There you go.
Enjoy.